My sister made false accusations against me because I refused to supply alcohol for her party. My sister was 18, and was my mom's golden child. My dad thankfully has a good head on his shoulders, and always called my sister out on her BS. But my mom's interference always meant my sister got off easy anyway. This is what happened back then. My parents decided to take a vacation to ski in Aspen and let my sister watch the house for them. They told her no parties, but that was a rule she straight up ignored. A day after our parents left, my sister started sending out invites to a party and she was promising free alcohol. I didn't see that post just yet. But my sister called me and asked me to go get alcohol for her party, because I was over 21 and could legally buy it. She also wanted me to pay for it and said she'd invite me to the party and introduce me to an easy girl in order to pay me back. I told her that I wasn't going to break the law to make her happy. She should never have told people her party would have alcohol. She screamed at me over the phone that I was ruining her life, and that she couldn't take back the invites now that they were all over her Facebook. I told her that what she did was really stupid because she and her friends were all underage, so it's illegal. She tried to say it'd only be illegal if I snitched on them. I said I wouldn't snitch, but I wasn't going to buy her booze either. She screamed at me some more, so I hung up the phone. Well, that night my sister had the party and someone called the police for underage drinking. After being arrested and confronted by police later on, my sister threw me under the bus and said that I'd supplied the alcohol she was using. Turns out she actually broke into Dad's liquor cabinet, and thought it'd be better to frame me for her crime. Police came and arrested me at my apartment the day after the party. They seemed already convinced I was guilty, and didn't really listen to me when I said I was never there, but I willingly cooperated with them. At the station, I told them the whole story and got them to look at my sister's Facebook post. Thankfully there were a few people there who listened to me. But I still had to sit the night out in a cell while my parents were called. My mom and dad flew back home overnight, and bailed out both my sister and I, but my mom tried to make my dad leave me in jail because my sister had told them her lies as well. My dad took the time to talk to me and look at my sister's Facebook, so he believed me. This caused a fight between him and my mom. When they got home, my dad discovered my sister had broken into his liquor cabinet and spoke to police on my behalf. My mom, however, still wanted the blame to fall on me because the charges were ruining her baby's future. But my innocence was further proven by the fact that I and my car were seen on CCTV when I left work and when I arrived at home soon after. My car did not move from there for the rest of the day and night. In my sister's story to the police, I had driven out and gotten the alcohol for her. But I wasn't seen on CCTV in any liquor store in the county, and my bank account showed no transactions buying alcohol. My parents' house also had a camera at the front door, and my car was never seen in the driveway that day. After being confronted with those facts, my sister's story changed to saying I already had the alcohol and gave it to her at my apartment. But my sister's car had never showed up at my apartment either. There were like 3 cheap beers in my apartment fridge and no hard alcohol. My sister finally had to give up on her lies, and my parents were severely disappointed in her. But my mom still tried to convince me to take the fall for my sister. She came to my apartment and actually demanded that I tell the police that it was all my fault. I said I wasn't going to ruin my future for her. She refused to leave and went from demanding to begging. She even got on her knees and tried to convince me that she and my dad would make everything okay in the long run if I just took the blame now. I said I'd rather live my life poor than have that felony on my record. She threw a huge fit and started throwing things because I refused to do as she wanted. I threatened to call the police and she left my apartment cussing me out like a mad woman. I've never heard so many F-bombs out of her before or since. But she kept them up all the way to her car and followed it up with saying she should have aborted me before driving off. I called my dad right away and told him everything that happened. He was insanely pissed and got in a huge fight with my mom as soon as she got home. She didn't even deny anything she said or did, because she deemed it would have been for the greater good of their daughter. But my dad told her that she couldn't destroy me to save my sister. Then he threatened to divorce her if she didn't try to make things right. She ended up sobbing and then saying she'd do whatever he wanted. My dad said that it was couples and family counseling, or it was divorce. My mom signed a prenup before she married him, and really had no choice. In the family counseling I called her out on how she always believed my sister's lies. My sister tried to say they were not lies. But each one I pointed out from over the years said otherwise. I'd taken the time to write a list of all the ones I could remember from the past decade that had all been proven she lied. And my mom and sister were forced to stay silent as I read them all. They tried to interject repeatedly, but my dad and the counselor silenced them. My sister, now proven beyond a doubt to be a liar and a manipulator, just shut down and refused to say anything more to the counselor. And my mom finally apologized to me. But it was obviously a forced apology because she looked so uncomfortable doing it. I told her that her apology was very fake, and after so many years of favoritism the damage was already done. My relationship with her never really recovered, because she was convinced I was guilty no matter what was said until my sister admitted the truth, and then wanted me to pretend to be the guilty one anyway to protect her favorite child. But nothing went her way, so she just went back to crying about it. When my sister went to court, my mom pleaded with the judge to go easy on my sister for the charges of underage drinking and giving other underage people alcohol, as well as attempting to frame me for her crime. She also resisted arrest when the police came and shut down the party. She was very intoxicated when it happened. They kept her in a cell overnight to sober up, and then she told police I'd been the one to provide the alcohol. My mom's begging, along with a relentless lawyer my parents hired, got the judge to cut a deal, provided my sister plead guilty. Which she did not want to do. But her lawyer highly recommended she take said deal to avoid jail time, because there was no other way of keeping her from getting a felony on her record. My sister's lawyer used the fact that the alcohol had not been bought that day, but rather had already been in the house long before the party happened to help lessen the charges. My sister's Facebook had also been completely deleted by her as soon as she was able to in order to hide the post. The judge just wanted the case over with, so my sister got off with a huge fine that our mom paid most of out of her own pocket, and a couple years probation. She was also made to get therapy too by our dad. She's never really shown actual remorse for what she did though. And only had animosity for me, no matter how in the wrong she was. She was eventually diagnosed as a narcissist after dad made her go see a doctor. After her probation and 4 years of college were over, she decided she was going to leave home for California and never come back once she landed a good job. She currently works in an office in LA, and we've not spoken in years. Dad got her that job, and she's not shown any real appreciation for it. Even my mom has given up on her ever coming home for the holidays and us being a family again. It tore her up inside for a few years, but now she's just bitter. She doesn't really blame me anymore, but we only seem to show indifference to each other. Just because my sister cut her off wouldn't make me the new de facto favorite. It just means my mom lost her baby, and isn't getting her back. She can't leave my dad because she's too reliant on him, despite having her own career. She'd never want to be on her own again. So she's just become a shell of her former self. Things between me and my dad are still great. He's pretty much disowned my sister for what she's done and has stopped caring if she'll ever talk to him again. He and my mom don't even sleep in the same bedroom anymore. She moved into the guest room some 5 years ago and has stayed there. Their marriage is really only one on paper these days.
Even after losing his job and wanting to end everything between of my life 1 month after getting pregnant. I knew I could go places if I really wanted to, but I tried on his needs and be a good wife. But, nothing. He got joy out of calling me fat, ugly, and a bad. He wasn't a good provider for the family and didn't have a job for 5. My stepmother stepped up as the breadwinner for both our kids in fun of me, saying my belly fat was showing so I should cover up me a backhanded apology, which I accepted just to keep the peace. I just got tired of being a housewife and wanted to go back to college so bad. I didn't understand this and didn't believe in mental health issues, so he called me since I wasn't good enough. His treatment became worse. He was force himself onto me because even though I was fat and undesirable, I happily agreed to it, though I did have a set of rules for him to follow. He's not allowed to touch me ever again. Then he would go looking for the perfect girl who would live up to all his impossible me, crying and saying that he loves me so much and he regrets. However, he had manipulated his fiancée between them, even going as far as threatening suicide. All his fault and he loves me so much. Then the next to break her heart and that the situation would be easier on me, because he tries to forget about them, which turns into threatening me with taking my. I don't give a flying F about his feelings and just want him to make a decision. My daughter called me crying because the babysitter took her journal and read it out loud in front of the kids while recording herself, but my husband was furious that I kicked the babysitter out. My husband and I work long shifts. We have 3 kids, and we've been hiring babysitters to help with the kids for years. My oldest is my 14-year-old daughter, Lauren. She's been going through a challenging phase after her best friend passed away from leukemia in December. It impacted her hugely. She received therapy for 2 months and is doing better now, But grief has no timeline, and she misses her best friend so much. I do all I can to be available and lend a comforting shoulder. We got her a new journal to write down about her thoughts and feelings, and she's been doing a lot better since she got it. We were looking for a babysitter, and my husband suggested a babysitter for his friend's 17-year-old daughter. I know her, so I said yes right away. She worked for us for weeks, sometimes teasing Lauren about her uptight, never smiling, and giving her the nickname Grinch. I told her to stop it, but she said she was just messing with her, trying to get her to cheer up. No biggie. While I was working days ago, Lauren called me crying, saying I needed to come home. I freaked out, and when I got there, I saw the babysitter sitting with the kids. Lauren was upstairs. She said the babysitter took her journal and started reading it out loud in front of the kids while recording herself. I was pissed off. I asked the babysitter and she said she was just messing with Lauren and showing her that it's okay to speak emotions out loud instead of bottling up. She thought it was helping her overcome her fear of expressing herself. I yelled, saying it wasn't her place and that she had caused more trouble than ever. She apologized and swore she deleted the video, but I told her she could no longer work for us and needed to leave. She broke down crying and apologized to Lauren and me, but I refused to let her keep her job. I know Lauren doesn't want to be around her anymore. My husband came home and was upset that I let the babysitter go, reminding me that this was his friend's daughter and that I shouldn't have made her leave. He argued that I mishandled this and should have been the adult instead of yelling and kicking her out. I explained what she did to Lauren, but he said, I agree with you on this. She should have known better, but she didn't. Kids her age make mistakes, and what's done's done. She apologized, so we should give her another chance. He kept on about how this impacted his friendship of 14 years. Also, we're now without a babysitter, and his trip is this week, so I have no choice but to let her come back, but I said no, she will never step a foot in the house again. He called me unreasonable by referring to everything as if it were mine, and that he shouldn't have an opinion, and said it's his house, too. I ended up calling him delusional for expecting me to rehire her after the stunt she pulled on Lauren, and I won't let it happen because my daughter can't feel comfortable in her home. He was distraught by what I said and stopped speaking to me. My boyfriend jumped out of a moving car on the highway because I raised my voice. 6 months pregnant, 25, and my boyfriend, 28, jumped out of a moving car on the highway during an argument today. I, 25, and my boyfriend, 28, were on the way to an ultrasound this morning, which is an appointment I had to make 3 months ago. He worked a night shift, so I told him if he wanted to come to the ultrasound I would drive so he could rest. We don't have a toxic relationship and we don't argue much, but we got into what I thought was a small argument in the car. I had to fill up on gas and I started to fill up my tank and asked him if he could finish filling it up for me. When he got back in the car I noticed it didn't cost that much and he told me he didn't fill it up all the way, to which I responded, next time fill it up all the way so I don't have to stop again to get gas sooner. I paid for the gas, so it's not a money issue. My saying this really set him off. He got in a really bad mood and was mad and kept saying don't talk to me like that. I responded, and said I was sorry and next time I will ask in a nicer way and that it's not a big deal in the first place. I just wanted to let him know for next time. He continued to get angrier and say you don't understand / don't talk to me like that. At this point, I got mad and said you need to learn to communicate with me better because simple conversations like this should not turn into arguments, and I was listening to him and apologizing to him and now he needs to listen to the way he is talking to me. He kept getting angrier and at this point I got extremely angry and I raised my voice and said fuck you. When I did this he opened the car door. We were driving on the highway with lots of traffic, and I slammed on the brakes and I was shocked and said please don't do this, I love you and we can work this out, and he jumped out and walked across the highway. I pulled off to the side and texted him and called him just telling him to come back, this isn't safe for either of us, etc. He just responded and said I'm done with you. He did come back to the highway and get back in the car after 10 minutes and said take me home, but this ultrasound is important and has taken me months to get, and I told him I am going to the appointment in a calm tone. Of course, I cried for like an hour because I'm pregnant and more emotional than normal. He went to the ultrasound without saying a word to me, and after the ultrasound, I went to the restroom and when I came out he was gone. Had Ubered home and taken all of the ultrasound pictures with him. I feel he is completely wrong in this situation and that him putting me and our unborn child in harm's way over his emotions is completely unacceptable and scary to me. I had plans to fly to where my family lives in 2 months to give birth and am thinking right now that after this I need to fly there now so I can feel safe and be around people who think rationally. However, I am pregnant and my brain is definitely very foggy and I am open to the fact that I could be wrong in this situation. I know I shouldn't have raised my voice, but I still don't think it is an acceptable circumstance to put everyone in danger, and he is still extremely angry with me, but he doesn't really communicate so he won't talk to me. What's the biggest secret your partner has hid from you? I started dating a military guy just after graduating college. I'll call him Trent. We matched on Tinder and I thought he was incredibly handsome and charming. The 15-year age gap didn't bother me since I have a brother the same age as Trent. I gave him my number after just a few days and we were FaceTiming all the time. He was in another state for a leadership training course and set to be back to my home state by the end of the month. We talked about our days, our love for Star Wars, and how we were both raised Mormon. I had never met someone else who was raised Mormon and left the church, so I felt like we connected on a deep level. I was falling for him. Hard. We had a fight just a few days before he came home. I told him how I wanted to go to Disneyland with 2 of my best guy friends to celebrate graduating with honors. Trent was asking if he would be invited along, to which I said no, because we are still strangers and I had never met him in person. He got very defensive and said he would never go on a trip like that without his significant other. I corrected him and told him that we aren't together, but he still seemed very hurt. I actually blocked him for 3 or 4 days after that conversation because it seemed like a big red flag. After the 3 or 4 days, I unblocked him. I missed him and felt heartbroken. Trent was really excited to hear from me and told me that the friend he would be living with picked him up from the airport. We texted sparsely for a few days and I spontaneously asked him to come to the town I live in to finally meet in person. He agreed and my heart was pounding from excitement and nervousness. I told him my boundaries and explained that I wanted to keep talking before jumping into a relationship. Trent agreed hesitantly to this. After a few weeks, we became exclusive and I was over the moon about it. We fell for each other very quickly. He was coming over every day and I spent every bit of my free time with him. I started to notice that he would never pick up phone calls in front of me and he would quickly put his phone away when I entered the room. I called him out on it and he said it was because he didn't want to be distracted while spending time with me. It always gave me weird vibes but I brushed it off. I noticed that he never invited me to his place. I began asking to come over after being together for about 3 or 4 months and he always had excuses. He told me that his friend had 2 boys and one was autistic and unpredictable around strangers so they didn't want anyone over. I tried to be understanding at first, but this went on for 3 more months. Then 6 more months. He played it off as his friend never being home when he was home and not texting him back, so it was basically impossible to confront them. I became very anxious about him being on his phone because my gut was telling me something was very wrong. I had gone through his phone a few times and there was never anything out of the ordinary. He didn't have any women in his text messages or Snapchat. His photo album was full of pictures of me. His call log only had a few guys from work and me. Something was not adding up and I was straight up paranoid even though we had many mutual friends and I met his coworkers before going to the military ball with him. Our anniversary came up, but Trent was in the field so I didn't get to celebrate with him. I had told my family bits and pieces of my concerns and they were furious. One night, my dad approached me, saying he hired a private investigator that he found online and then they found evidence that he was most likely married. He asked me who Cheryl was and I said that was Trent's sister. As it turns out, the PI had found a maiden name for Cheryl as well. The whole world stopped and I felt numb all over my body. I was in disbelief but it all made so much more sense. I went online and searched her name in a free people search website and found some close family members. Trent's name appeared, and so did her mother's. I looked up Cheryl on Facebook and found nothing. I looked up her mother on Facebook and started scrolling through her photos. I found photos of Trent and Cheryl at their wedding. I also found family photos of them with their 2 children. I realized that he was talking about his own kids when he talked about his friend's autistic son. I confronted him about it the very next day and he had nothing to say. He kept trying to lie and saying he was divorced but they lived together on base. I threw up from crying so hard. He begged me to stay and apologized for lying. The kicker about it all is that his excuse for not telling me about his children was that I always said I didn't want kids and I would have never dated him if I had known. Mom kicked me to the curb when she found out I wasn't having a miscarriage. My mom was never a good mother. I ran away at 13 to live with my dad. Found out I have something called a tilted uterus. It never caused me issues so I never paid the news any mind. Fast forward a few months, and I'm 14 now. Home at my dad's alone, suddenly I collapse in agonizing pain. I'll try to describe the pain. My back felt like someone had a hold of my lower spine and was trying to pull it from my body, while simultaneously twisting a knife in my stomach. All I could do was crawl my way to my bed and cry. Dad and his girlfriend came home to hear me screaming. He asked what was wrong. I tried to act tough. Oh, it's nothing, just my period. I'll be fine, etc. His girlfriend told him that was not normal and I needed to go to the hospital. Being the manly man he is, didn't want to handle lady problems and called my mom to take me. My mom shows up pissed but remains outwardly calm until I get in the car and pull away. Instantly starts telling me that I'm probably having a miscarriage. That's what I get for being a slut and getting pregnant at 14. I, between sobbing and screaming in pain, try to explain what the doctor told me. She of course calls me a fucking liar and to shut up. Got to the emergency room, sign in, her explaining her theory to the nurse. Finish and told to go wait. While in the waiting room she never said a word to me, just glared. The nurse calls me in and tells her to wait until the exam is done. Not happy about this but is not willing to argue with the nurse, she sat down and shut her mouth. When the exam finished, she got called in. The doctor explains everything I had tried to and follows up by telling her that I'm definitely not pregnant. It's just a bad month and it will pass in a day or 2. He can give me something for the pain. Mom denied that offer. I was sent home just to wait it out with instructions to take it easy. Get in the car, still crying, and no words from her. Very tense. I admit, knowing my mom, that this next sentence was a mistake. But in my delirious state, I just wanted my mom's comfort, for her not to be mad at me as I did nothing wrong. I said, I told you I wasn't lying. Instantly pulls over the car, simply, but very angrily says, get out of my car now. She left me there to get myself home. No cell, no money, in crippling pain. I managed to walk a few blocks very slowly, the last few I literally crawled back to my dad's. Finally getting home, his girlfriend found me and helped me up to my bed. Got me Tylenol, hot water bottle, and a washcloth. I told them what my mom did. His girlfriend was stunned and my dad just shook his head in disgust. That was the last time I spoke to or seen my mom in 8 years. Stupidly I reached out when I was actually pregnant. But that's a whole different story.
What facts about Japan do foreigners not believe until they come to Japan? Well, I have lived in Japan for almost 3 years and the below incidents were hard to believe when they occurred. We took a taxi very late at night after we missed the last train to reach our place. The total bill was about 20,000 yen, but taxi driver took only about 16,000 yen, saying that he took a wrong turn and it has caused 4,000 yen excess bill and he won't take that. My friend got his train pass made for 10,000 yen and lost it on the same day. It could have been used by anyone, but somebody returned it to railways personnel and we got it back the next day when we inquired about it. While coming back in taxi from market to our place, we didn't have exact change to pay to driver and driver also didn't have it. We asked him to stay for 5 minutes so that we could get it from somewhere. He felt so much guilt for causing us the inconvenience that he apologized to us and left without taking any money. On a Friday night we came back from office at around 11 p.m. and were looking for some beer. We asked to a person who was standing at counter of a Starbucks company cafe. He was so much eager to help us that he came with us for around 200 meters, leaving his counter to his colleague, and made sure that we find a beer shop. While traveling in train on a Saturday night, there was a co-passenger girl who was so much drunk that she puked in the train itself. The other co-passengers provided her the tissues and a plastic bag, and despite being so drunk the girl cleaned everything and apologized to everyone. While in Tokyo Disneyland we asked a sweeper worker to take our snapshot photo. He kept his broom aside at some distance and took our snap. After we were done, some other group came and asked him to take their snap. We went ahead to see other attractions. After around 1 hour we came back to same point and saw a queue at that point for getting a snap done from that sweeper. The person was happily and enthusiastically taking everyone's snap. So much humility. I can go on and on.
My autistic boyfriend is creeping me out. He thinks I'm his manic pixie dream girl. Me and my new boyfriend are both autistic and have started seeing each other about 4 months ago. Both of us have never been in a relationship before. He has started to give me the creeps lately. He found a picture of me on social media from when I used to be goth and has been pressuring me constantly to dye my hair blue again like in the picture. He screenshot all my pictures and showed me he did that, yet won't follow me on any social media, yet stalks/keeps tabs on me. He also wants me to get tattoos and dress like that again. He got me to bring all my old goth clothes to his apartment and they're in different places every time I come over, which tells me he's obviously doing something with them. He snoops through my stuff in general. He shows me offensive over intimate pictures of tattooed/alternative women e-girls and OnlyFans creators with tattoos in public, asking me what I think of their look and if I'd change myself to look like them. He has some kinks and religious trauma which I am non-judgmental towards, but he is always trying to do edgy intimacy and butt stuff with me, and thinks I'd be into that because I used to be goth. He gets me to show him my old goth pictures and has tried to trick me into syncing my Google Photos onto his computer so he can access my pictures. I would never give him any pictures because I already caught him taking picture of me without my consent and sending them to multiple people, his family and friends. He also tries to track my location and internet usage and get money from me, but never directly talks to me about anything, yet he is always trying to trick me. He used to love bomb me but now treats me like garbage. He's narcissistic, entitled and overall disrespectful. I've told him that I don't want tattoos and won't dye my hair and that goth is a music subculture, not a kink, and he never listens. He shames my body, my finances, my clothes, where I live, the list goes on. He doesn't listen to me in general and I feel like an object. He never wants to do any fun activities with me and I'm always compromising for him. He is very straight-laced and wants to go to places like goth clubs and nude beaches just to stare at women. Lately he has been trying to control and shame me for what I eat and also body shamed me for being fat and hairy. I am 5'8" plus 120 pounds, I am on the skinny side. He wants me to body build but also not eat anything. It doesn't make sense. He points out other women exercising and takes a little dig at me. He wants me to spend thousands of dollars on my appearance, yet he has terrible hygiene and won't even comb his hair and brush his teeth for me. He likes parading me around like a show pony while he looks practically homeless. It's humiliating. He is classist and calls me poor for being upper middle class and inflates how wealthy he and his family are, yet never pays. His brother shamed me when I met him. Made me feel awful. We have problems in our intimacy life as well. He has a hard time finishing and checks out other women all the time. He acts 12. He is 27. I feel controlled, devalued, criticized, unheard, and taken for granted. He is full of shame and I can't get him to have an adult conversation about any of these issues. I tried to end it twice and he starts sobbing and telling me how much he needs me, loves me, cares about me, thinks I'm brilliant, etc., practically begging me to stay. I feel used and manipulated. He's an awful, reprehensible person.
Today I messed up by ignoring every hint that she wanted to sleep with me. Admittedly this wasn't today but rather this weekend, so I, 26 male, had plans to meet up with my close friend, 29 female, this weekend, and I had caught feelings for her a long time ago, but she said she didn't think of me in that way. But she was super flirty during previous interactions, so that's why I thought she liked me too in the past. So to not ruin our friendship, I told myself I wouldn't try anything. Flash forward to this weekend, she lives like 3 hours away, so when she got here, she said outright, "Hey, I'm crashing at your place tonight." I say cool, no problem. We do our normal thing, get food, walk around a bit, then just chill in my apartment for hours. We ended up getting drinks that night and were both sloshed when we got back to my apartment. As we're getting ready for bed, she changes into her sleepwear in my room. Me trying to be respectful, I didn't look or anything, but she left the door wide open for me to see if I wanted. After I get my stuff on for bed, we were gonna watch a little TV in the living room. As we were heading to the living room, she stopped and said, "Wait, don't you have a TV in your room?" So we both got in my bed too, watched TV, and me being drunk, I fell asleep not 5 minutes later. The next morning she decides to take a shower as I'm straightening up. To my surprise, instead of getting dressed like she said she was, she decided to throw on one of my shirts. Just my shirt. She told me that she didn't want to put on clothes yet and even said it was just my shirt and nothing else. Just my t-shirt. It's long enough on her to where it looks like a dress on her, so I didn't think much of it. We're spending all day in the apartment anyways, so why get fully dressed? We end up spending the whole day just talking, playing games, and enjoying each other's company. Admittedly, she cuddled up to me a little bit, and in hindsight there were a few times when she looked at me with do me eyes, but I thought she was just being friendly. As we're playing games, she was making a lot of innuendos, but again, I didn't think much of it. As it's time for her to leave, she gave me a longer than usual hug and just looked at me in my eyes with a smile. It looked like she tried to lean into me, but I stupidly didn't try to kiss her. Anyways, later that day she asked me why I didn't do anything with her or make a move, and that's when everything clicked. She was basically throwing herself at me and I didn't pick up on it at all. She's home now and we won't even be able to see each other for weeks because we're both so busy. Today, my wife said, "I love you" for the first time, and I have been crying like a baby. It is very difficult for my wife to be affectionate with words. She shows her love through actions. She's often told me, "Te quiero," or "I adore you." Her love language is actions and physical contact. When I say I love you, she always says me too. It never bothered me since I know she never said that word to anyone, not even her family, because of things she lived during the school, and now she just hates to feel weak in front of other people. She hates to be vulnerable and always shows herself as cold to the people who don't know her, although she's really sweet with me and our baby. When her parents tell her they love her, she just nods even though she loves them too. She feels that word would make her too vulnerable with the person she says it to. We've been married for many years, and I'm her only partner. Yesterday, she was putting our baby, he's just 6 days old, to sleep, and out of nowhere, she said, "Hey, I love you, and I love you too," to me and the baby. I had no other reaction but to hug her, but when I went to the bathroom, I started crying a little because I was so happy for her, and she said that as if nothing, in a moment of pure peace. It was like feeling her finally find her peace, and I was just too happy for her. She found out, and after that, she was pampering me all night and telling me that she loved me, to which I could only cry. I've always known she loves me, so that doesn't make me feel sentimental. But what makes me cry is that she chose me to be the first person she feels safe to be vulnerable with. I know how much it means to her to be able to say those words, too. I want us to be vulnerable together without any shame. I'm just crying because I'm so proud of her. I know how hard it feels to be vulnerable. Finally, I love her too much, and I'll never let her down. Edit. It's crazy how some people take an innocent post, make it negative, and even say my wife will be a bad mother. Love is shown in thousands of ways that are not words. Some couples always say I love you to each other but don't feel it. I don't understand how many people believe that a couple's love comes down to who says I love you the most. I'm not that insecure. I hope everyone can find a partner who makes you feel loved without needing words or forcing situations. My girlfriend told me she was pregnant, and a few days later she said she had an abortion, all as a joke. English is not my first language, so bear with me here. I'm a 27-year-old male, and my girlfriend, 28, and I have been together for the past 2 years. It's my first serious relationship, and she's the only person I've truly loved, I mean really loved. I have 4 siblings and a mother. I like my siblings, but I do not love them, and I hate my mother because she was abusive, both physically and mentally. I've never been close to them, and I've always believed that being related by blood doesn't obligate you to love someone. However, I knew one thing: if I ever had kids, I would love them no matter what. Becoming a dad was my most important dream. Not just a father, but a daddy, a man who would do anything for his family, who would watch his kids take their first steps, hear their first words. I just wanted to be there for them, to see them, to listen to them. But now, I don't know if I still want it. My girlfriend told me she definitely wants to have kids in the future because it was her dream too, to become a mom and have a happy family. We like to play pranks on each other, but they were innocent jokes like doorway tape pranks or hiding a small plastic spider in a drawer. Everything happened this week. Last week was normal. There was no indication that my girlfriend was planning a prank. On Thursday, after I came back from work, she sat in our living room looking concerned. I immediately noticed and sat next to her to ask what happened. She then showed me a pregnancy test and said she was pregnant. I couldn't believe it. I was overjoyed. I hugged her tightly and kissed her. Although she still seemed concerned, I excitedly told her that we would be parents and that, although it's a big responsibility, we would manage together. She asked me not to tell anyone yet because she wanted to do it personally. I agreed, thinking she might tell her parents during our usual Sunday dinner at their house. I was the happiest man alive. I had been looking for an engagement ring, planning to propose, but now I decided to wait and buy a ring she deserved, to do it right. I was excited all day and wanted to spend all my time with her, but she wasn't in the mood. I thought it might be hormones, so I didn't push and assured her I was there if she needed anything. That night, as we went to bed and I hugged her, massaging her belly, I told her I loved her and we would make it through. Before we fell asleep, she mentioned needing to take a day off from work. I told her it was fine and to call me if she felt bad. I would come home from work early to be with her. The next day, I woke up before her and went to work as usual, leaving her a note that read, "You will be a perfect mother," to reassure her. I texted her a few times during work, but she didn't respond, which worried me. When I came home and she wasn't there, I called her several times without a response. I contacted her mother and sister, but they didn't know where she was either. After waiting a few hours and trying to call her many times, she finally returned home. I hugged her and asked if everything was fine, and she said, "Yes, now everything is fine." She said we needed to talk, so we sat down, and she began to say she was afraid of being pregnant and didn't think she could be a good mother. I interrupted her, insisting she would be great, citing how she cared for her niece. She said this was different, she wasn't ready to be a mother yet, and with a small smile, she said, "I had an abortion." I was shocked and asked her to repeat herself. When she did, my heart broke, and I started crying, asking, "Why? You said you wanted to be a mother." I fell to my knees, crying, reaching out to her stomach, asking, "Why?" I looked into her eyes and shouted, "How could you take my baby?" She regretted it but didn't answer. I screamed, "Why did you take my baby?" Then she started crying, saying it was all a prank. I cried even harder, asking if she was still pregnant, but she denied it, saying she had never been pregnant, and it was supposed to be a joke. She hugged me, apologizing, saying she didn't think I would react like this. After a few minutes, I asked her why she thought it would be funny, but she couldn't answer. I pushed her away and walked out, saying I needed to be alone. She tried to stop me, but I told her to leave me alone and drove off. I stopped at a parking lot about 40 kilometers from where I live. My phone was ringing constantly. I knew it was my girlfriend, but I didn't want to talk, so I turned on airplane mode. I lay down in the car seat and fell asleep. The next day, I woke up cold and went to work. A friend noticed I was upset, but I just said I had a bad night. After work, I cried again on the drive home and decided to sleep in my car, not wanting to be a burden to anyone. My phone was dead, so I lay there all day, thinking about what happened. I couldn't imagine myself as a dad anymore. Every time I tried, I cried. My heart was shattered, and I didn't know what to do. Today, Monday, I've decided to go home and talk with my girlfriend. I'll update in the next few days. I don't know what to say to her or how I'll react when I see her. But one thing is clear, she's lost my trust because she knew how much being a dad meant to me, and I don't know if I can forgive her. I hooked up with a hot girl, but she gave me a weird list of rules that she wants me to follow. When I arrived to a party around 10:30 p.m., the music was already blaring 3 blocks away. I got a little tipsy and then I noticed one girl at the party, who seemed to be standing next to the wall on her own, holding a cup in her hand. She immediately caught my eye because she was otherworldly beautiful. She had long, blonde hair and blue eyes. The blue dress she wore prominently showed her sultry figure and it was all I could do not to stare. She seemed to catch my gaze and smiled, as she took a sip from her cup. "Yo Daryl, you having a good time?" Half-drunken Alex wrapped his arm around my shoulders, almost spilling his drink on me. I leaned in and shouted in his ear, so that he could hear me over the loud music. "Yeah, man. Hey listen, who's that girl over there?" "What?" He raised his eyebrows and leaned in closer. I repeated my question and once he glanced at the girl, he said, "I don't know her name, man. But Matt's been with her, says she's a beast in bed." "Ha," I said, catching the girl's gaze once more. I had just ended a 3-year-long relationship, so I wasn't really looking for anything serious. A one-night stand sounded like a perfect way to end the shitty year that was 2019. Alex leaned in to shout something in my ear. "Hey, but even though she screws like a nymph," Matt said he'd never interact with her again. "Why?" I asked. Alex shrugged. "No idea. He just said that inviting her home was the worst idea." "Hey, Jamie." His attention went to another friend that passed by and I was left alone with my own thoughts, as difficult as they were to be heard in such a loud place. Matt was pretty picky with women, so having another girl that isn't to his liking was no big news. I realized that the girl was still staring at me with a seductive smile, so I allowed the alcohol in my blood to give me the surge of courage I needed to approach her. We introduced each other and made some shallow small talk. She said her name was Melissa and after a few brief exchanges, I asked her to dance. She said yes, spurring me to try and take things even further. As we danced, things started getting more heated between us and at one point, Melissa wrapped her arms around my shoulders and leaned in, as she said, "Do you have a place? We can take this somewhere more private." She bit her lip as she said so and continued dancing gently. "I got an apartment. Not too far away, we can use my car," I said, my pecker practically talking instead of me. She nodded and before anyone noticed, we were out of Alex's house. We barely managed to enter my apartment with our clothes still on and as soon as I locked the door behind us, she stopped kissing me and said, Wait. Before we do this, there are some things you need to know about me." "What things?" I said, not caring about talking right now. She gently pushed me away, blushing and panting and said, "Please, this is very important. Listen to what I have to say and I promise I'll let you do anything you want with me later." She ran her hand across me. I nodded and agreed to let her speak. She sat upright on the couch and exhaled, before she said, "Alright, so. There are a couple of rules you need to follow, because otherwise you may put yourself in danger." "Oh great," I thought to myself. She continued, "The first thing you need to know is now that we started this, we need to finish it to the end. If we don't, you'll have 8 years of bad luck. If you ask me to leave after we've done it, something even worse may happen." I frowned in confusion, but before I could ask anything, she continued, "If you see my eyes turning red while doing it, close your own eyes, but don't stop. You're going to hear me making deep, guttural noises, but they should be gone within a minute or so. Again, just don't open your eyes during that time. I can't be responsible for what happens to you if you do. If you feel my grip getting painfully firm on you, like claws, stop moving and I'll gradually let you go. After we are done doing it, I will ask you some questions, like how it was for you, have you had any better partners, how many girls you slept with, etc. I will need you to answer this as truthfully as possible. I'll know if you lie. Once we are ready to go to bed, put a piece of any kind of raw meat out of the fridge on the counter and leave it there overnight. We'll be sleeping in the same bed, so if you touch me during the night and I feel ice cold, ignore me. I may wake up and try to coax you into speaking to me, by asking you a question or becoming hysterical. Whatever I do, just ignore me. I won't hurt you, so as long as you pretend I'm not there, you'll be fine. If you wake up and find me staring through the window, get out of the apartment as quickly as you can. Don't bother getting dressed, just get out. If you wake up and I'm not there, call out to me. You're going to hear one of the following things, either me saying that I'll be right back or calling you to come out. Ignore the latter, that's not me. And last, but most important rule, make sure to set your alarm and wake up at exactly 6:06 a.m. If you see me still in bed by then, covered with the blanket over my head, get out of the apartment as quietly as you can. I will be out of your apartment by 6:05 a.m., no exception. That's all. She exhaled, staring at me in anticipation. I stared back, with mouth agape. I hadn't even realized how dumbfounded and breathless I was until she finished. So, do you have any questions? She shrugged. No. I mean, everything is clear. Give me a moment please, I need to use the bathroom. I fumbled to form a sentence and excused myself to the toilet. While there, I texted Matt, "Hey bro, you know a girl named Melissa?" His response came almost immediately. "Yeah, why?" I said. "Well, I hooked up with her, but I heard you said there was something wrong with her. What's her problem?" Matt read my message right away, but responded only after a minute. "Did you invite her home?" The message made me feel uneasy. I started to type, when his next message came through. "Bro, please tell me you didn't invite her home." "I did." I responded, my hands practically shaking by this point. Shit. Matt replied, "What is it?" I asked, now starting to feel full-blown panic. He said, "You have to go through with her rules now. Don't kick her out before she decides to leave on her own. She will be out of there by 6:05 a.m. "Bro, what are you talking about? I'll just tell her I'm not feeling well and send her home." "Don't do that. Listen to me, don't fucking do it." He immediately responded. "Why?" I asked. He typed for a moment, before saying, "Because my friend Kit did it. And they found him dead in his bed 2 days ago." Just then, 3 slow knocks resounded on my bathroom door.
My sociopath boyfriend instructed his kids to knock my mother's urn down because he wants to test me before proposing. He said you failed because I threw them out of my house. Just recently, my boyfriend and his 3 kids came over for a day of fun. They'd been there for about an hour when my boyfriend said he needed to go to the store to get some things for dinner. Not even 5 minutes after he left, the kids started acting up and completely out of control. I mean screeching, throwing things, opening the fridge and pulling all of the food out, taking a pen and running up and down the hallway while writing with it on my walls. Nothing I said or did made any impact. They wouldn't go to timeout, they didn't care about not playing games. They wouldn't listen. It was a complete 180 from the kids I'd grown to know and love. I was calling my boyfriend over and over, and most of the time he sent me to VM. When he did pick up he would tell me that's nothing, they're fine, you're the adult, and when he was finally annoyed with me he told me to handle it how I see fit and that he would be right back. He hung up abruptly and when I went to call him back I heard something shatter. I whirled around to see my mom's urn shattered and on the floor. It had been on my fireplace mantle next to her picture and one of the kids had gotten on the reading chair to knock it down. I absolutely lost it. I started shrieking at the top of my lungs for them to get the F out of my house. They seemed to be in shock and wouldn't move so I grabbed the 2 oldest by their jackets and threw them out of my front door. They were crying when I went to retrieve the youngest and as I was marching back to my front door to put the youngest out front as well, my boyfriend appeared. He demanded to know why the kids were crying and I told him, "Because your kids are godless demons that are going to wind up in jail or dead when they grow up." I then shoved his youngest at him and turned around to go back to my house. He followed behind me scolding me for abandoning the kids and instead of telling him to egg off, I told him to come see what they'd done. He looked at everything with a dry expression. I mean nothing to show outrage at how the kids behaved. I started to think he was being purposely aloof when he said you failed. I thought I'd misheard him, so I asked him what? He said that he told the kids to put me through the ringer because he wanted to propose to me and he needed to be sure I could handle the stress of being a mom. He said that if I was his true love and if I truly loved the kids, I'd be able to handle all of this without calling him over and over or ditching the kids outside. I started rage crying and asked him if he understood that they destroyed my mom's urn because of him and he replied, "She's gone, Bunny. We're here. You were gonna have to toss that creepy thing out anyway, once we moved in." I slapped him not once, but twice. I didn't care if the kids saw, or if he called the police, because who the F does this to someone? He told me he would forgive me when I called and apologized to him and the kids. I told him to go to hell, and he said I'd see things clearly when I calmed down. I blocked him on everything, and then took pictures of the destruction and posted about it on every social media account I have. I believe that he saw my post and everyone was enraged and commented on how vile he was. He has my email because he emailed me and told me I was overreacting to everything, and that everything could be cleaned or replaced, including my mom's ashes, as they were most likely dust and cigarette ash and not her actual ashes. I emailed back saying, "We are so done. I have zero desire to get back together with him, because as far as I'm concerned he's a sociopath."
I think my best friend has a very inappropriate relationship with his mom. My best friend who I grew up with used to get teased a lot about being a mama's boy. Thing is, he's always had a very weird relationship with his mother. As we got older and started getting into girls more, he would say weird stuff and normally I'd laugh it off and call him a weirdo, or when we got older I'd tell him he needs to get out the house more. When we were checking out chicks he'd say stuff like my mom has a way better body than she could ever have, or my mom's boobs are way bigger. As far as I can tell it's always been him and his mom. Growing up I had never seen him get a girlfriend. He talked to girls, but I never physically saw him have a relationship with any girl until the one he got married to. Last weekend, his wife, who I'm really cool with, said to me, "I hate it when he goes on his family trips cause whenever he comes back home to me he's always cold and acts like a jerk to me." So then we started talking about his family trips. I remember when he started taking family trips when he got married. I always thought that because he was old enough and mature now that he'd go and spend time with his father or something, but when his wife said it was just him and his mom and they do this family trip every month, we started talking. Things got even weirder to the point she said, "Okay, enough crazy for one night. He takes family trips over the weekend with just him and his mom every other month?" This started to become more frequent the longer his marriage went on. I spoke to him today and just joked around about stuff pertaining to his situation and he got kinda agitated towards me. He said, "What? You think I'm banging my mom? What kind of freak does that?" And I just rolled with it. Kinda laughed it off and said I was just effing with him, but his reaction was not genuine at all. If his wife is cool with it, should I be too? He's like a brother to me, so should I just let this go and forget about it? I don't want to ruin our relationship or sour it or even possibly uncover something that makes him do something extremely irrational. If it has been going on this long I want to try and help him. Update: over this past week me, my wife and my friend's wife sat at their house and had a long discussion on how to approach this very delicate situation. We decided that it's best to just simply come out and say something. Talk about what is going on and what we are feeling. His wife definitely wanted to talk about everything, but she didn't want to do it alone, so she asked if we could sit in with them and let her get down to what's really going on. Fast forward to Saturday and we come over to have intervention. I'm sitting with my wife on one couch and him and his wife are sitting on the other couch watching TV and talking. His wife grabs the remote, turns the TV off, and says we need to have a talk, all of us. For some reason she chose to completely ignore everything we went over, how we were going to try and break the ice and lightly touch on the situation and try to be welcoming, warm and understanding. How we set up little spaces so we could backtrack and everything. Nope. She just went straight in for the throat with, "What's going on with you and your mother? And you need to be honest with me." Everything we planned went right out the window within the very first few seconds. It was like she was attacking him, backing him into a corner instead of trying to be there for him. I was angry, I won't lie, but it's his wife so I couldn't say anything. She bombarded him with all these questions and accusations, and when she finally let up, I was able to quickly get in and try and bring the volume of the room down a bit. I brought up stuff from our past when we were kids in school, and some of the things he said that seemed off and his behavior that was awkward. I laughed a little and threw in a few jokes, and thank goodness my wife was there to laugh and try to help make light of some of what was going on, but his face. He had this look of disgust and defeat. He never commented back on anything, not a single peep, just sat there quietly in what seemed like he was festering in his own misery. As soon as I was done, his wife immediately went back to full-on attack mode with, "You just gonna sit there while we ask you these questions? And your quietness speaks volumes." After about 30 minutes of us asking him questions, he stood up and balled his fists and finally responded. He was angry that we would suggest these things and asked us if we were all sick people and tried to turn the tables on us. That's when his wife stood up, started crying, and accused him of lying because whenever he lies he touches his face a lot and looks at the floor, which is totally true. She started crying more and screaming, asking him very personal questions about their marriage. To that day I was always kinda jealous of their marriage. They always seemed happier than us, never really argued, very passionate towards each other, and they never ever really complained ever, but when she started talking, why was I wrong? She said stuff like, "Is that why we never have intimacy, because you're out there effing your mother? And you are effing sick in the head, you need help, therapy and a psychiatrist." She brought up all these things about them never having intimacy, never spending time together, he never gives her compliments, treats her badly, ignores her when she's talking to him, holds grudges against her for months at a time. Then she stopped, started dry heaving, put her hand over her mouth, and said she's gonna throw up. My wife got up and held her. She continued to dry heave and call him a sicko. Then he just said "F all of you" and stormed out of the house. I ran up and caught up to him and asked him to come back and calm down, but he ignored me entirely. He called his mom and she came to pick him up a few blocks down the road, where he was just standing while I tried talking to him. When he got in the car he slammed the door, rolled down the window and said, "Never ever talk to me again, I'm deleting you out of my life for good." Then rolled the window up, and that was the last I spoke with him. I went back to his house and tried to console his wife with the help of my wife. She told me all the issues they were having and how deep down she knew what was going on, but he was happy and she didn't know how to handle it. On Monday I went over to his mother's house and she refused to open the door and even threatened to call the police on me if I didn't leave. His wife hasn't seen or spoken to him since that Saturday, but we all know exactly where he is. I'm going to give everything some time to cool down a bit and call over there on Friday and hopefully talk to him or his mother. His wife went to file for divorce. She asked me not to come over anymore. My best friend has blocked me on everything. I don't know what outcome I thought would happen, but I didn't want this. I'm angry and I blame his wife. Honestly, this could have gone so much differently, so much more pleasant, but no. She snapped and just went into full-on attack mode. Maybe she's been living with this for years and it all finally violently erupted. Maybe this was her out and she didn't care about saving her marriage or ruining our friendship. I'm angry that we planned all this and then boom, there goes the dynamite. Whatever the case is, that weekend I lost my best friend and that hurts so much. I don't even know what he's going through right now. Was he being honest? Was he telling the truth? Was he lying to us? So many questions and so much heartache right now. I just sat at home, hoping to lose a few hours in a different reality. Go to part 2. I think my best friend has a very inappropriate relationship with his mom. After not talking to my best friend for over a year and thinking that I lost him forever, I received a very interesting call 2 weeks ago. It was him and he wanted to talk. He asked to meet at our normal hangout spot and I said, yeah, and he said the date and time. Before I could continue to say anything else, he hung up on me. I was happy, but I also was extremely worried. When we met up he looked like poop. His face was pale, bags under his eyes, and he looked miserable. I ran over to him and gave him a big hug. I started crying and said how sorry I was for accusing him of that type of stuff, how he's my brother no matter what, and all this other stuff, mostly just spilling my guts and blabbering away to him. He hugged me back and we both cried and apologized. 2 grown men crying like babies. After the initial waterworks, we sat down and he told me how his wife had divorced him. She spread all these lies about him and stuff on her Facebook. He had gotten fired from his job because of those lies and all of this other stuff that all came from that messed up attempt at an intervention. I just sat there feeling like complete trash knowing that I caused all of this. Just as I was about to apologize he cut me off and said, wait, there is something I need to tell you, man. Remember when I was younger and my parents got that divorce and I told you that mom got really crazy afterwards? Yeah, I remember. The divorce was bad and ugly. His dad cheated on his mom with some super young chick at a fast food place. He told me that after the divorce she started drinking a lot. Sometimes she wouldn't even be able to take him to school or go to work the next day because she'd be so sick. The drinking got worse and one day when he was 15 and sleeping in his bed, his mom came home super late and came into his room completely hammered, touched him, and then had the audacity to snuggle up in bed with him and pass out. After that night, she'd drink, get intoxicated, touch him, and when she was sober she'd act like nothing happened. She even started telling him that he was the man of the house and that he had certain responsibilities now that he's the man of the house. This abuse continued all the way up until January the 1st of this year. He finally had enough and put a stop to it. He said he hasn't seen or talked to his mom since March of this year. I just started crying, like seriously crying. Here I was thinking I was his best friend and I didn't even know what was going on all these years. I kinda expected something, but I wasn't 100% sure and I didn't have any type of proof at all. He even said how he thought about unaliving himself up until he met his wife and she took him out of that house, but his mother would still call him over or plan getaways just to get him away from her. His mother hated his wife with a passion. I never knew he was suffering alone all of these years. How could I even begin to call him my best friend or my brother, and I was never ever there one time for him out of all these years he was going through stuff. He asked me to not say anything to my partner and if I could keep this between me and him. Of course I agreed without hesitation. We spoke about him getting help and he made me promise not to say anything about this to anyone. He said he doesn't want his mom to get into any trouble and he doesn't want her to suffer because she's already suffered enough from his dad. I cannot for the life of me believe that all these years she's abused him and he's still willing to sit here and protect her. Even made me promise not to do anything. Honestly, I want to burn her house down with her in it and I'm sorry if that sounds cruel, but that's what she deserves. I am so incredibly angry, sad, and everything in between. I know I said I wouldn't do anything, but I cannot sit around and let her get away with this. All these years and she's just going to live her life carelessly while he now has to spend the rest of his life seeking help and getting his life in order? F that. Oh man. I don't know what to do, what I should do. I love him, he's my brother, so I will be there for him and help him get the help he needs, but damn it, she ruined his life. I am going to keep his secret safe with me. He's back in my life and I'm given another chance. I won't mess this up again by jumping the gun. I'm just so damn angry. My heart is hurting and I feel so terrible. I really want that woman to pay, but at the risk of losing my friendship? No. Update, it's been almost 2 weeks. He seems like he wants to get help, but he doesn't ever make the effort to do so. Maybe he's afraid or ashamed? I did call the Rope Crisis line and I spoke to a few people, everyone said pretty much the same thing. I cannot force him to get help, he has to both need and want to be helped. He has to put the effort in doing so. I also went to the police station and asked a few questions, but nothing can happen any further until he chooses to come forward with anything. But I'm not going to push him to do anything as of right now, I mostly just wanted some information and answers about a few things. My question is, does anyone know of anything I can do to help give him the support to motivate him to take the first step in getting help, or am I rushing things? I moved him in with us for a while, until he got back on his feet. The thrift hotel he was staying at was disgusting, but he's good with us now. We've talked and also played a few co-op games together, but whenever the talk comes up about what to do next he switches it to finding a job and getting himself together. He has mentioned a few times needing therapy and getting help, but never acts on it. Would it be okay for him to just up and get a job and move on, or should he try and get some help before that?
What happened when you saw someone pick on the wrong person? Back in 2019, my family and I decided to go on a road trip up the East Coast. One night, we decided to stop in Fort Bragg, North Carolina. While there, we elected to head to this small bar to get some dinner before calling it a night. Upon arriving, I noticed there's this one really loud dude who's trying to flirt with every single girl that walked into the bar. Anyways, there's this one lady that he's really bugging, and you can visibly tell that she's uncomfortable but he's not stopping. That lady then decides to go sit down next to this really quiet bunch of dudes in the corner. Upon noticing the company these men were giving her, he walks up to them and starts losing it. He yells a ton of obscenities and tries to show off the fact that he was a ranger or something, but these dudes just ignore him. Eventually, he gives up and just grabs the girl's arm. At that exact moment, one of the men stands up, grabs that dude's arm, flips him like a ragdoll onto the ground, and pins his arm to the ground. They have a quick chat about niceties before letting him go, and that dude is promptly ushered out of the restaurant. Later found out the dudes at the table were special forces of some type.
What was your favorite workplace justice served moment? When I was in high school, I worked at a popular warehouse club selling computers on the weekends. I was hired by the store manager via referral of a friend. I loved computers and they thought I'd make a good salesman. My job was to stay in the computer department and sell computers, nothing else. Well, one of the shift managers didn't like that, and started insisting that I needed to go fold clothes for at least half of my shift. I told him that the store manager had instructed me never to leave the technology department, but he insisted. This went on for several weeks. He even wrote me up for this one, saying that I was refusing to follow instructions. The store manager showed up one weekend when the power-tripping shift manager and I were working. The store manager walks up with the shift manager close behind. The store manager slaps a stack of paper down onto a shelf and points to some highlighted numbers. He looks at the shift manager and says, "Do you see this? This is our average technology sales numbers for the weeks you are on shift. See this number over here? This is our average technology sales numbers for weeks he," meaning me, "is on shift. At this point, it would be more cost-effective for me to simply fire you. What do you think of that solution?" The guy stammers and stutters like a toddler caught bullying another kid on the playground. The store manager made it clear that when I was on shift, I was not to leave the technology department unless I was on break or there was a fire in the store. That shift manager never said another word to me. The shift manager wasn't fired, but he was demoted to a regular salesperson. He was a horrible salesman.
I punched an autistic kid after he groped me and now everyone hates me. That grope was the last straw. I have known Troy since kindergarten and he has always been babied. It was always his autism that made him who he was. I don't know why, but he always had a crush on me. I rejected him gently multiple times, but he never took no for an answer. As we grew older, he got worse. He started commenting on my chest, asking to touch them, asking to see them. His friends kept trying to convince me to show him because nobody would be nice enough to give him a chance, and in year 7, 6th grade, he started groping me. I told teachers, but they kept saying that his autism doesn't make him know any better. It was only me. He got jealous when I was in the presence of another guy. He would have meltdowns and I got into trouble because I knew how upset he would get. No, I didn't. It was like my only purpose was to be his. I wasn't allowed to be my own person. The groping continued. I kept telling him to stop. He didn't listen. I remember crying on the floor and teachers just kept saying that his autism makes him like this and that I am being a good person by taking care of him. His groping hurt. I don't know how to explain it. He just grabbed me hard, and it hurt. The groping continued for 4 years. I was always his caretaker, his girlfriend, his best friend, I couldn't stand it anymore. I couldn't take it anymore. It was hot and I wore a skirt, and he proceeded to do it to me. I lost it and punched him around the nose. His nose got broken and unfortunately now I am getting put into isolation for 2 months for bullying an autistic kid. He's not a kid though, he's a 16-year-old. He acts normal around his friends, he treats everyone else with respect. He's not a kid. Now everyone hates me. I have been receiving death threats and people have been saying he should have done worse. Now all I want to do is curl up and pass away. Maybe I should have been nicer. Maybe I should have been more sympathetic. Maybe I should have just accepted it. I could have been his only chance. For the record, I don't despise autistic people. He is not a representative of them. He is just an awful person. Troy is just a horrible person. Thank you for letting me vent.
You want to wear tough guy pants? Good luck cleaning them tomorrow. I work as a bartender in a small cocktail bar for some time now, and I'm usually chill. But bullies can still push my buttons in the wrong way. Before starting, I may be in the wrong for doing this, but it is what it is. A week ago, a bunch of guys came for a few. They seemed like okay dudes, early 20s, but the group dynamic was kinda off. Introducing the main antagonist. Obnoxious guy, too loud, snapping his fingers at me when ordering. Don't snap fingers at bartenders, kids, we're not dogs. Punching his friends in the shoulders all the time. A sportier, really aggressive version of a David Spade character he was. Next to David Spade, sat the victim of most of his playful teasings. Silently enduring his stuff, I really felt sorry for this fellow. He wasn't a drinker, but he looked like he would rather be drinking distilled devil's piss than continue sitting next to this macho maniac. He was really uncomfortable. David continued to bug him to take a shot at least. Come on, one with me, don't be a punani, a female dog. Until, after a whole night of persuasion, finally my dude waved the white flag. Okay, let's do one shot together, then leave me be. 2 of your most effed up shots, Spade shouted, snapping his effing fingers, while I imagined snapping his effing neck. Oh, you'll get a effed up shot, buddy. I made these 2 layered shots, but while looking almost the same, they were different. David got stuff like Red Jacques Saigneau absinthe, 75% alcohol, Stro, 80% alcohol, Tabasco, 110% flaming diarrhea, really nasty business altogether, and the other guy got mostly syrups, juices, and harmless stuff. They looked almost identical. Red absinthe can pass visually as a cranberry juice, Stro as a syrup from brown sugar, Sambuca as anything colorless, etc. They took their shots and all hell broke loose. Other guy chugged his shot like a champion, not even flinching. Why would he? He drank juice. But David spayed. Boy, oh boy. He looked like he'd have a brain aneurysm. Tears poured from eyes, coughing like his lungs wanted to come out. He had the face and posture of a man who just got waterboarded with some sort of chili sauce. Other guy looked surprised until he caught a wink from me, but David Spade and the rest of the crew, now roaring with laughter about his misery, suspected nothing. They got their shots on the house, poor dude was left alone, and David was a good boy for the rest of the night, deflated enduring small mockings from his fellows. Now, I may have used my powers in a wrong way, but this is the first and only time I messed with customers' drinks. And I regret nothing. He was rude, aggressive even, to everyone around him. F you, sporty David Spade.
I stayed with my cheating husband, but now his ex-mistress is ruining my life. Judge me however you want, I don't care, this is my marriage, and I thought I made the right choice at the time. My husband is not perfect, but there aren't many good men in this world, and I'm not willing to try all over again to find a life partner. I am 41 years old, and I have been married to my husband for about 10 years. We both have very demanding careers. My husband works as a lawyer and I am a school administrator. We both work almost 60 hours each at our jobs on a weekly basis, and as we have gotten older, we have only taken on more work. We never had children since we agreed that we wanted to focus on our careers. Even though we were both very driven and busy, our marriage worked as we were very close and romantic in the early years of our relationship. We used to take turns taking each other out for fancy dinners and unique dates, and we loved slow dancing. Some nights, we would pay bar owners and pianists to let us keep dancing alone together even after closing. It felt like a dream, and even though our marriage changed so much over the years, I never saw something so devastating coming. A couple of months ago, I forgot my husband's birthday. I only remembered at about 8 p.m. at night and felt awful. I ran out to get a cake and flowers right before he got home. I started cooking his favorite dinner. When he got home an hour later, he walked into the smell of his favorite meal and saw his cake and flowers laid out on the dining room table for him. I gave him a tight hug and a kiss, and I told him that I was so sorry that we had been growing apart lately. I told him how much I loved him, and I promised that I would do my best to turn things around since I wanted us to reconnect. It was an emotional night. My husband also apologized, and he also agreed to commit more to our relationship. Sure enough, things started improving. It felt like the good old days. We set apart Fridays for date night, and we planned exciting, fancy dates to take each other on. Like when I took my husband to his favorite jazz club from back in the day, and the week after he rented a private yacht for us as well as a private chef for the night. It felt like I was falling in love with my wonderful husband all over again, but the illusion was shattered one day when I came home to find him crying on our bed. I never saw my husband cry. He was a lawyer, for Christ's sake. Either way, I sat with him and asked him what was wrong. That's when he told me he had been keeping something from me, and as our marriage got stronger, so did his guilt. I stayed with my cheating husband, but now his ex-mistress is ruining my life. I sighed and asked him for the truth. I told him whatever it was, I would hear him out. That's when he confessed to me then that he had been having an affair with an intern from his office named Eve for the past 2 years. The news hit me like a train, but he was extremely regretful about the entire solution, and he told me he had broken it off the day after his birthday. He begged me to stay with him, and he promised he would spend the rest of our lives making it up for me. I was heartbroken, and it was one of the most difficult nights of my life. I took a few days to let the news sink in, but eventually, I realized that even though he had hurt me, I still loved him. We had just started to repair our marriage, and I wasn't ready to just throw it all away. By the end of the week, I had decided to forgive my husband, and he showed me all the evidence of him breaking up with Eve, and he gave me all his passwords as well. That's when I saw that even after he had texted her that their affair was over, she just sort of ignored the message, and had been messaging him a couple of times a day for months, even though she never got a response. It looked psychotic. She had been having a 3-month one-sided conversation in my husband's messages, so I told him to just block her that same night. The next morning when I woke up, I had to do a double take when I saw that I had a Facebook notification from Eve herself. Starting at 2 a.m., she had sent me maybe 9 paragraphs long messages about how much she hated me and how my husband was her man and nobody else's. The messages were unhinged and extremely hateful. She even sent me multiple voice messages cursing me out and calling me a old wrinkled beach. I showed my husband the messages, and he was appalled. He apologized and told me to block her. Little did I know that would only be the very beginning of her insane harassment towards me. I stayed with my cheating husband, but now his ex-mistress is ruining my life. It was such a heavy time. I was trying my best to reconnect with my husband as well as forgive his infidelity. Meanwhile, Eve continued to message me and harass me from random and anonymous accounts and phone numbers. Eventually, she escalated her messages from just sending hate to sending her and my husband's old intimacy tapes. She would even send me screenshots of his SXTS to her. I won't lie, Seeing those things almost made me leave my husband. But again, he was there to support me through it, and he truly was improving as a partner and trying to prioritize my feelings. We tried everything to get her to leave me alone. We even went as far as to try and get a restraining order, but the cop said she hadn't actually done anything to me, so there was nothing I could do. I was already starting to feel defeated when her messages took a dark turn out of nowhere. She started talking about unaliving herself if my husband didn't come back to her. She was saying things like if I can't have him, no one can, and that she would make sure we didn't just forget her. Even though she had been sending crazy messages for weeks at this point, these threats chilled me to the bone. I went to the police again, only for them to turn me away, saying the same thing. Well, only a week after I went back to the police station for the second time, I worked late, and I didn't leave my office till almost 10 at night. I have to walk through a dark parking garage to get to my car at the end of the day, and even though I live in a safe area, that day, when I stepped into the garage, I immediately sensed something was wrong. I started walking to my car, and realized that I felt like someone was watching me through the darkness. Right before I got to my car, I heard a woman's voice from the shadows. I turned my head towards the sound, and saw a young woman step forward into the very dim light of the garage. As soon as I saw her, I knew I was standing face to face with my husband's affair partner, the one and only Eve. She looked so young, her face was obviously swollen from crying, and her eyes were wide and wild. The hair on the back of my neck stood up as she spoke again. This time, I heard her when she said, "I can't let you have him. He loves me, you know?" That's when I watched her slowly raise a firearm and point it straight at my head. I froze for a second, and she opened her mouth to speak again as her face twisted in anger. "He loves me. Me." She shrieked as she started unloading bullets in my direction. I might be middle-aged, but adrenaline immediately started pumping through my veins, and I managed to leap out of the way and duck behind a car. She just kept screaming her head off and shooting as I tried my best to stay low behind cars as I navigated out of the parking garage. I called the cops as soon as I got out of there, and running away from the building was the most afraid I had ever been. I ran, and I was sure that at any moment, I would turn around and see her chasing right after me, ready to put a bullet between the eyes. By the time the cops got there, she had fled, and it's been 2 days since it all happened, and they still haven't found her. I haven't left the house since then, and until they catch her, I know I won't feel safe in public again. Maybe this is all my fault. Maybe if I had just left my husband when he first told me about her, my life wouldn't be at risk right now. But now it's too late, and I fear that she'll stop at nothing to get her revenge on me.
What is your worst first day on the job? I'm a front-of-the-house worker, and I was basically shadowing another worker at the drive-thru at Chick-fil-A. I got there at 10:30 when my shift started and found the coworker that was supposed to be training me. We went to the drive-thru at about 10:38 or 10:40. My first mess-up was when I decided not to get a drink before starting against the advice of my coworker. I said I had just brushed my teeth so it would taste weird, and they were like, fair enough. After working for about 20 minutes my stomach started to hurt. It didn't feel like I was sick, more just like I was really hungry. I had eaten at about 9:30, so looking back I probably should have realized something was wrong given that I already felt like I hadn't eaten in a day or two. I tried to push through and I ignored it for about 30 more minutes. By this time I thought maybe if I get a drink it'll help, but there was no one with a headset on the inside at the moment, so I just continued to ignore it. About 20 minutes later, as it was getting worse, I finally told my coworker and asked when we could eat. He said that because I clocked in at 10:30, I would probably eat sometime between 1 and 2. I continued to ignore it. Another guy arrived and my coworker told him to get a Sprite, a couple other drinks, and an iPad for me to train on. He came out about 10 minutes later as the pain continued to get worse. I drank some of my Sprite and started to try to take orders to the side with the iPad in training mode as my coworker actually took them. About 15 minutes later, I felt queasy and told my coworker I felt like I needed to throw up. He said to stop thinking about it, so I did, and the feeling subsided for the most part. Another 15 minutes went by and the feeling came back stronger than before. This time I said I think I'm about to throw up. I need to go to the bathroom. He said to tell someone and go. I didn't have time for that. I thought I did, and that was part of my mess up. I waited entirely too long until it got to this point, ignored all the warning signs, and decided I could push through. Realizing this, I set the tablet down, took a step towards the other column and threw up on the ground. The vomit also hit another employee and covered her work bottoms. She was cute too. My dumb self stood there for a good second before I started walking towards the bathroom. I didn't want to run and risk upsetting my stomach more. I got to a flower bed by the sidewalk that leads into the entrance right next to the drive-thru, and I threw up in it. This one hurt and it went in my nose this time. I thought to myself, well, crap, as I kept walking. I got about 6 feet, which is the distance to another flower bed, before I threw up again in the other flower bed. This was the biggest throw up so far, and it was dripping out of my nose. It was in my nasal passages and down the back of my throat as well. I stood up and had a bit of barf on my shoes and pants. It was on my face too. A random guy who was getting in his car got out and handed me a stack of napkins. One of the guys who helped interview me saw what happened and came out asking if I was okay. I said no, smiling a little bit. I smile in awkward situations, and it's led to some misunderstandings, and I've gotten in trouble at school in the past because my teacher thinks I'm being smart or not taking them seriously because I'm smiling while I'm in trouble. Another worker comes out and tells me to come inside and get cleaned up. I do, And then she tells me to go and get my phone and stuff. She asked me if I felt bad when I came in and I said no. She asked me to describe what happened and I nonchalantly said I felt bad and I threw up 3 times. I threw up on the ground, onto a coworker, then in a flower bed, then in another flower bed. Mind you, I'm still smiling and she puts her head in her hands and laughs about how much of a disaster this was. I threw up 3 times in front of the entire lunch rush hour line on my first real day at my first job ever. Anyway, I sat on the bathroom floor of a big stall and just texted my family and told them to pick me up. I knew it wasn't clean, but I couldn't give less of a crap because my shoes and pants already had barf on them and I had to sit down. What is that one trick that they really don't want you to know? Microdosing on mushrooms is legal, despite the law telling you otherwise. You just have to know which kind of mushrooms to use. I'm a professor at an elite university researching how to make full use of the effects of psychedelics. People already microdose for various reasons such as treating anxiety, depression, or even just for the fun of it. However, they cause more trouble than they're worth. They produce hallucinations, headaches, reduced energy and focus, and long-term use can even damage the heart's valve, which would inevitably result in death. The mushrooms I've been studying don't have any of these effects on anyone since they're nothing like magic mushrooms. They're considered functional mushrooms that properly redesign the effects of your mind and improve your body's immune system. They're the only kind of mushrooms that give your body nutrients and enhance brain function. I made sure to be my own test subject for this experiment so I could understand how well the mushrooms would work on the body firsthand. I promise this wasn't an excuse to get high at work, it was for research purposes. As for the mushrooms needed to legally microdose on mushrooms, I used lion's mane and chaga mushrooms. This is because lion's mane boosts cognitive function and memory. It even reduces anxiety and depression, so taking lion's mane would be much healthier than using psychedelics. Chaga mushrooms make the body stronger so it can fend off diseases better, such as cancer, and protects your brain cells. These mushrooms would then be mixed with caffeine to truly enter a focus state and have heightened cognitive abilities. So before a long day of teaching, procrastinating and losing focus, I brewed a pot of the flow state mushroom coffee in the morning. I didn't feel the effects of the coffee immediately, but after a 20-minute drive to the university, I could tell there was a difference in my body's function. I felt a spurge of energy coursing through me, and I actually felt ready to teach. As I was teaching, I presented lessons clearly and got through everything I had planned really easily. I noticed less of my students asked questions, and some even told me the way I explained everything that day made it easier for them to understand the material. Most of my classes even ended early, which rarely ever happened. I spent the next couple of hours grading my huge stack of papers. I unintentionally let the piles get too big because of how drained I feel from using all my brain power to make sure my students get the education they paid for. Luckily, since I was able to finish classes early due to drinking the flow state mushroom coffee, I knew I could handle the papers with ease. I sat at my desk and went into great detail about what each student did wrong and how they could improve, which is normally a hassle for many professors. Though I was able to get through 2 piles of papers instead of my usual half. My students were shocked out of their minds when they realized they were receiving graded work earlier than usual. Some even pinched themselves because they thought they were dreaming. After a week of taking the flow state mushroom coffee, the atmosphere in my classroom had changed. My students were more relaxed because I was practically explaining the lessons to them like they were 5. I was even told that their major is actually interesting when they understand what they're talking about. And because I had given them their graded work early and they played to their strengths and improved on their weaknesses, their test scores shot up. The class average used to be embarrassingly low. I even contemplated quitting my job, but the majority of the class scored more than 50% this time. It's made me love my job more and my students actually like coming to class now. I was just happy to be managing my workload better, and it helped that the flow state mushroom coffee was more effective than drinking regular coffee, since it did more than just keep me awake. Edit. Since a lot of you were asking where I got the mushrooms from, I found a flow state mushroom coffee that has the same ingredients. It's called Clarity Brew. Search it up.
What accident happened in a sleepover that ruined the sleepover? When we were growing up, one of our close friends at the time had to wear diapers because of a car crash that left him totally incontinent. We knew about it and it was fine. I mean, it wasn't his fault some drunk idiot left him with a disability. Our friend group was really close, so we were used to his accidents and had sleepovers all the time. Well, one night, something did not sit well with him because around 2 in the morning, we all woke up to the smell of death. Poor kid had absolutely unleashed everything in his body so bad that it spilled out onto my bed. We were all gagging and trying hard not to upset him over it, but it was just too bad. I think the combination of embarrassment and the sheer scale of the mess sent him over the edge though. He ran out to call his mom to come pick him up while the rest of us had to evacuate my room. My mom was passed out drunk by this point, so I had to gather my sheets and take them to the laundry room while my 3 other friends picked spots out in the living room to crash. I told him he was able to take a shower while he waited for his mom, but he was too upset and just waited outside in that horrid squalor. We didn't see him for a few days after that, but then everything went back to normal. We never brought it up at any other sleepovers.
My husband is a loser. My husband 22M and I, 21F, are high school sweethearts. We have been married for 3 years and have 2 daughters, one is 3 and the other is 13 months old. I'm also 36 weeks pregnant with our first son. I feel like I do everything. All the cooking, cleaning, laundry, vacuuming, yard work, childcare, any handyman stuff around the house. Even car maintenance. I'm a stay-at-home mom, so I understand that I may need to do more of the housework, and I'm in charge of the childcare, but the division feels like it's 100 to 0. My husband works in construction, and has to wake up early, sometimes work late, work outside in the cold and heat, and he comes home exhausted. I understand it's exhausting work, but he doesn't understand that I want a break too. The second he comes home, he goes to the gym for an hour, eats whatever I made for dinner, then plays video games until he goes to bed. Sometimes he doesn't even eat dinner with us. I feel like his daughters barely know him, and I barely talk to him. On the weekends he stays up playing video games, sleeps until noon or later, and just watches TV. Anytime I try to bother him about helping me with something, he says that he shouldn't have to do anything on his days off. Yet anytime I ask for help on a work day, he says that he shouldn't have to do anything because he worked today. I'm sick of it. I regret having kids with this man. He never follows through with anything that he promised me. I feel stuck and unappreciated. I wish I could go back in time and warn myself to never fall for someone who would end up being such a loser. I feel like I'm in too deep now to leave. There's no jobs for me in this area and I don't have time to go to school. I feel stuck.
My ex-fiancée of 8 years broke up with me via text, then ghosted me. She's now joined my friend group because I'm dating one of her friends. My ex Jess and I were together for 8 years and engaged for 3 of them. I fully expected to marry her and spend the rest of my life with her. Well, in early 2016 her job offered her an amazing opportunity to temporarily work 4 months in the company's satellite office in New Zealand to temporarily manage and lead a new team. It was very sudden, and I was not really happy with the idea, but she really wanted this chance and opportunity. So off she went. We decided to stick together throughout this time frame, of course. I flew out to visit her after 2 months. However, when I arrived at the airport, I got a text message from Jess. The message was short and more or less consisted of, she was sorry but she has met a new man in New Zealand who she loves more, and she thinks it would be best if we went our separate ways from now on. She then completely blocked me on every single social media as well as my phone number. I was confused, devastated and became an absolute wreck. I remember completely breaking down in the airport. I spent the next 4 days living at a motel basically trying to get into contact with her in any shape or form. She had apparently blocked everyone in our circle of friends. Even Jess's close friends from our circle of friends were shocked, confused and basically lost. Even her parents were extremely confused when I called them. Her dad, who I was extremely close with, refused to believe it at first. I was a mess for a solid year, but my close circle of friends managed to drag me out of my hellish hole along with some therapy. Her best friends became close friends with me. About a year ago, she invited some of her old close friends to her wedding with the new man. No one went, and I quickly found out about the wedding, which hurt me even more. Well, over a year ago, I started dating one of her old friends as me and her had gotten close over the last 2 years. She felt quite hurt when my ex basically ghosted her. Unfortunately there was some awkwardness because she knew I was not fully over my ex, but she has been a supportive and amazing person and I am extremely happy with her. Life was going great for me. Then in December, Jessica apparently moved back home after divorcing her husband because he apparently was physically abusive. Now, she is making this hugely concentrated effort to reconnect with people in our friend group, which is resulting in some very conflicted feelings for some people. Last week I found out that Jessica and some of my friends have started playing D&D, which frankly made me feel like crap. Part of me just wants to move on from this, but I am struggling hard. While my girlfriend has been extremely supportive, I just feel numb and don't really know what to do. Today Jessica sent me a long Facebook message basically apologizing to me for what she did, and asked to be friends. I have not responded yet, but I'm very puzzled on how to proceed. What was your weirdest experience at somebody else's house? My first substance dealer was a guy only known as Smithy. He was always dirty and smelled bad, a sweet guy but terrible hygiene. How he wasn't in prison always bewildered me because he made absolutely no effort to conceal his ways of earning money. He was the perfect first dealer to have as he was dumber than a bag of rocks. You could forget to pay him and he would forget about it himself. Always late, would sometimes give you just the substances without a bag and assume you'd have something to put it in. Once made me meet him in the pub and gave me my green in a used pint glass. It still had foam everywhere and the green looked very old, but it was dirt cheap. He was a man that put me on edge for sure. One time I was buying and he was giving me the vaguest instructions on where to meet. Each time I called he would get even more mad, eventually saying, "Screw it, you can meet me at my flat and then get out." Was half thinking screw this, I can't be bothered anymore, but I wanted something for a little party. Me and my dad were celebrating the 10-year anniversary of me and him having our first hit together. Went to his flat, he buzzed me up. Lift broke and I had to walk up 3 floors. I get to the floor below and I can smell the green and think that he is smoking himself. Reach the top floor and realize this man is cloud9 eating pizza without a shirt watching adult movies. I see a Rottweiler who makes eye contact with me and charges at me. In that moment I froze and just accepted my fate, expecting to get mauled as a consequence for messing this guy around. Dog gets halfway down the hallway and just flops and slides along the wood floor on his back, so he stops at my feet, belly up, tail wagging. This dog was also intoxicated from the ambient smoke and was so chuffed to have some attention. I collected my green and he shared a slice of pizza with me. I left him to his movies and continued buying off him until he finally got locked up. Not for dealing but for taking the life of his little brother. What happened to you as a child that feels like a punch to the gut every time you think about it? I was 4 years old when my dad married my stepmom, who had 3 kids of her own. One night me and my sister was woken up by my dad, who told us to come into the kitchen. We could instantly tell by his tone that he was mad about something, and I wondered what I had done this time to make him mad at me. The kitchen was a wreck. All the cabinets were open and stuff was thrown everywhere. On the table was a pile of bags of cookies, snack cakes, candy bars, and all sorts of goodies. My dad pointed to the table and said, "Go ahead. Eat what you want. Eat all of it if want to." My stepmom, stepbrother, and stepsisters were all standing in the kitchen not saying a word. My sister and I nervously walked up to the table, took something and began cautiously eating our treats. The snack cake I was eating was one I had never had before. I reached up to the table and got another and said, "These are really good, you want one?" and offered it one of my stepsisters. A look of fear crossed my stepmom and step-sibling's face as my dad snatched it out of my hand and threw it back on the table. "No," I said, "you eat it." My dad yelled. My sister, who was older than me, asked what's going on. My stepmom yelled, "Just eat the damn cake." And my dad shot my stepmom a look that made everyone else not say a single word until me and my sister finished our snack cakes. "You want another one? Go ahead, eat everything on the whole table if you want to," my dad said. My sister and I, feeling really nervous having everyone watch us eat, said we weren't hungry and went back to bed. We never spoke of that night again. It took several years before I realized what had happened that night. My stepmom, whose kids were much older than me and my sister, had been hiding the snacks and giving them to her kids after she sent us to bed, and my dad caught her. After that night there always seemed to be snacks in the house. I know a parent loves their own kids more than stepchildren, but to purposely exclude me and my sister like that just showed me how little she cared for us. I took one for the team and dated a fat girl. Said girl is now my wife, and she just found out why I agreed to go out with her. 2 years ago I was at a party with a friend of mine named Joshua. Josh suddenly spotted 2 girls. The one he was interested in was this pretty blonde, while the other was her beluga friend. Josh turned to me and urged me to be his wingman by taking one for the team and distracting her friend while he chatted with the blonde. After a little back and forth, I decided to just do it to be a good friend. So we made our way over and made our move, where I would go in first and start chatting with the friend while Josh began flirting with the girl he was interested in. Again, this friend I was talking to was by no means unattractive in the face, just a beluga. I thought she was very sweet, even though I was just talking to her out of obligation. It didn't really matter anyway, cause ultimately the girl Josh was into already had a boyfriend apparently and had seemingly brushed him off, with him eventually patting me and on the back to signify I didn't have to chat with her friend anymore. So I decided to politely end the conversation, however, not before she asked for my Instagram, which I decided to give her. I didn't really think much of it at the time, and I was certain I would never see her again. However, a couple days later I ran into the same girl in my school's campus store. I didn't really recognize her at first, but she seemed to know me immediately. We decided to chat for a bit, and I was reminded of her name, Megan. Anyway, it was really just small talk until Megan suddenly seemed a little awkward. I asked her if everything was alright and she replied that nothing was wrong, but she wanted to know if I wanted to go out with her sometime. This actually came as a shock to me, as it was the first time a girl had ever made the first move and asked me out. So, even though she wasn't really my type at all at the time, I said yes. And that was probably the best decision of my life. Me and Megan really hit it off, and before long we were in a serious relationship. Any qualms I had about her weight were gone immediately after the first time we had intimacy, as I actually found her body to be really soft and comforting. More to play with, as I've always said. I had never felt so relaxed cuddling with someone before I met her. And there was a lot to cuddle. We've been dating for 2 years now and I absolutely love her. She's my everything, and I have even been thinking of proposing as soon as we are both done with school. Everything was perfect, until last month. Last month, we hosted a small get-together just for a few friends who are also in relationships, like a couple's game night sort of thing. It was here where Josh, who has been my good friend for years now, was pretty intoxicated, and made a joke about how if he had never forced me to take one for the team back then I would have never found the love of my life. The joke didn't really register to me as anything negative, and I was also out of it, so I just laughed it off. Megan was cuddled up next to me on the couch though, and asked what Josh meant by that. I told her nothing, but Josh, being the intoxicated idiot that he was, elaborated and told her the story about how we met through my perspective at the time. Megan just said oh, and didn't really react, so I figured she just brushed it off. However, the rest of the night she seemed kind of distant and even a little sad. Finally, once everyone had left, she let it all out and started crying. She was essentially in shock because this whole time she thought I approached her because I was interested in her, and learning it was because I was forced to seem to bring back old insecurity within her. It doesn't help that she's actually gained weight since back then, and now is truly big, even though I don't really have any problem with that and have told her that multiple times. More to cuddle and more to love. I immediately gave her the full story about how I fell for her right after that, and I have loved and adored her ever since. She seemed reassured and we even cuddled the whole night after that. Since that night though, she's been acting differently. It's like she's lost her confidence around me. She only wears large, baggy clothing even though she used to never before. She refuses to change with me in the room and hardly eats in front of me. Before, I used to playfully tickle her stomach sometimes and she'd always smile and play along. Now she seems insecure when I so much as accidentally graze it. She also refuses to have intimacy without a shirt on. I miss seeing them rolls jiggling sometimes. So far I sat her down multiple times and explained that her body is incredibly attractive to me and there's no one more beautiful in my eyes than her. But it's like she doesn't believe me. Lately I've been thinking about offering her to come to the gym with me, but I'm scared she may be more insecure at that suggestion.
What if God came down one day and said it's pronounced Yah then left? A large chunk of my taking the Lord's name in vain would go away. Yod knows what was in your heart when you said it. What if Satan came down one day and said it's pronounced Slate and then left?
What is the fastest you've wiped a smirk off of someone's face? My stepfather used to love to make my life miserable. One of the ways he did this was to walk through the kitchen while I was washing dishes, plunge his hand into the dishwater and yell, "This dishwater is ice cold. You can't get dishes clean in cold water. Now empty that out. Make some hot dishwater and wash all these over again." Since I detested washing dishes, this would always make me cry or feel defeated. Then he would smirk and walk out of the kitchen feeling very proud of himself. It didn't matter how hot the dishwater was, it was always the same. Sometimes he'd wait until I was almost done, when the dishwater was sure to be barely warm. So one night I had had enough. I put a stock pot on the stove to boil, then poured the boiling water in the sink with some dish soap. I loaded the sink with dishes and then stirred them around a bit with a wooden spoon to make it sound like I was doing dishes. Sure enough, I soon heard him coming my way. As he walked into the kitchen, I took a step back so he could easily reach the sink. He plunged his hand into the boiling hot dishwater. His hand came out of that sink so fast, it was a blur. He said nothing and gave no indication that he had just stuck his hand in boiling water. He just looked at me with mingled hatred and respect and walked out of the kitchen without a word. That was the last time he ever tested my dishwater.
Yesterday I went to a furry event with my boyfriend and I think I got the ick. I feel so bad. I didn't even know what a furry exactly was before I met him. We were together for literally 3 whole years until we moved in together. I found one of his furry outfits while I was helping him move his clothes into our apartment. At first, I thought that maybe at some point he had worked in children's shows or selling things in the subway. In my country it is normal to see people in costumes selling things, but then I also found a foxtail and thought it was something funky, but it's not. He got nervous and confessed to me that he is a furry. I looked at him like, what the heck is a furry? Anyway, he explained to me that years ago he created his fursona and it is a hobby that makes him feel at ease and happy. He said that he hid it from me because he was embarrassed and scared that I might leave him. I assured him that I wasn't going to leave him and that I love him, that knowing my boyfriend uses a fox suit was the least sensual thing in the world, but I support his hobby. I didn't really think much about it. Did it seem weird to me? Yes, but at the time I thought I loved him so much that I was going to support him. It's been a year since that and he's invited me to a furry event for the first time. I've never gotten into his furry events. I hadn't seen him wearing his suit either. I think he wears it very rarely, because it's not my thing at all, but he invited me really excited and shy. I couldn't refuse to go with him. But when we got there it was like, oh, this is getting real when I saw him park the car and put on his suit. I didn't have a suit so my face was totally visible when we got out of the car a few streets back and had to walk through the city center like that. I felt embarrassed even if it's awful to say that. First we met his furry friends who were waiting in a park for him, and I found out that my boyfriend has a name that he uses when he's in character. They were nice, but no, it's not an everyday thing to see your boyfriend using a pet name, dressed as a fox and talking to other people who are also like that, although some didn't have a suit, just a tail or nothing. I felt embarrassed because people around obviously walked by and laughed or looked curiously. A few minutes later we finally went to the place of the event and it wasn't that many people but a large group, most of them without a suit and just wearing tails or just a mask. I know it's wrong to say it, but a lot of those people smelled musty, long hair so greasy you could fry an egg on it, just weird people. Years ago I accompanied my sister to an otaku event and it was 95% the same kind of people, like weird in the wrong way. I've never been in that kind of environment as it's not to my taste. My boyfriend isn't like that at all. He's attractive, smells good, has a normal life and work, and I don't think anyone would expect him to be a furry, so it was my first time seeing other furries in person besides my husband. We like calling each other wife and husband although we're not married. At one point they started playing at removing each other's tails, some were doing choreographies and TikTok, some of them like to do high jumps in 4. You know what it's like to see your boyfriend do a choreo dressed as a blue fox while asking you to call him by his furry name and pet his head? I do know it and it was impossible for me not to change the way I see him. I didn't feel comfortable in the place. It bothered me a lot since there were some using harnesses in their suits. What is attractive about an animal? Some artist stands at furry art which was pretty explicit. My boyfriend dislikes that kind of art. For him his fursona is a performance, so I just felt even more weird because they're animals even if they call that a fursona. I felt weird and since yesterday every time I see my boyfriend I can't help but think of him being part of those people and him dressed like that. I really love him but I just feel like I got the ick. And I hate that because I always wanted to be the supportive girlfriend but this is just too much. I don't want to talk about this with my boyfriend and make him feel ashamed of who he is and what he likes. I don't want to make him feel bad about my feelings. He's a great man. Really the only time I felt tenderness yesterday was when he hugged me thanking me for support him in this. I just feel like the worst person in the world and the last thing I want to do is hurt him, even if his friends are too weird for me. I just hope I can get over this icky feeling fast but he just keeps showing me pictures of the event and telling me that he can't wait for the next one, and I just can't tell him that the last thing I want to do is go to one of those events again. Edit, I always supported him. I don't feel manipulated like some people say in the comments. I did want to go with him because I thought that maybe it was going to be fun. It wasn't. He's not into anything intimate. He told me that his character is a performative thing that he enjoys doing from time to time, but doesn't find it exciting or comfortable fetishizing a fursona, because at the end of the day it's just a character. That he told me that for him it's like a person getting aroused by being dressed as Mickey for a play. He can't feel like that. We literally live together and share the PC. If he had strange movements I would notice them. He goes to those events very occasionally because he doesn't like the more weird side of furry. I know he's not a perv and no, my intuition doesn't tell me that he is that. My intuition just tells me that the people at that event smelled funny and that I don't want to set foot in that place again.
What is a phrase someone says that is an instant red flag? I used to think I was pretty slick. I was a cheater. I cheated on tests, homework assignments, and even some of my college papers. I thought I was getting away with it, but I was so wrong. One day, I was sitting in my English class, waiting for my teacher to hand back our papers. I had cheated on this particular assignment, and I was feeling pretty confident that I had gotten away with it. But then, my teacher skipped over me when she was handing out the graded papers. My heart sank as I realized that she must know I had cheated. After class, she called me over to speak with her. I could feel the heat rising in my cheeks as she confronted me about my cheating. The worst part was when she told me that she was going to have to fail me for the entire class. I was devastated. I had never failed a class before, and the thought of it made me sick to my stomach. But that wasn't the end of my troubles. Word got around about my cheating and the fact that I had failed the class. Before I knew it, my employer found out about my academic dishonesty. He called me into his office and fired me on the spot. He said he couldn't trust someone who would cheat to get ahead. Now, I had no job, no money, and no hope for my future. And it was all because of my stupid decision to cheat. I had never realized how much cheating could affect my life, and it was the biggest red flag I had ever ignored. So, let this be a lesson to all of you out there. Cheating may seem like an easy way out, but it will catch up with you eventually. Don't be like me and make the same mistake. Just put in the effort and do the work, because it's worth it in the long run. Even though I had made a huge mistake, I was determined to turn my life around. I started looking for a new job and studying hard for my classes. I was determined to prove to everyone that I had learned my lesson and that I was a changed person. So, what is a phrase someone says that is an instant red flag? Well, for me, it was the phrase "I cheated." That phrase was the start of a long and difficult journey, one that taught me a valuable lesson about the consequences of cheating. It was a hard lesson to learn, but it was one that I will never forget. People who knew someone who died at work. What happened? I worked at a supermarket in the mid-2000s. We were doing inventory prep one night and the store manager said he was feeling kind of weird. He went to sit down in the office and suffered a fatal heart attack. He was fairly young in his late 30s and in relatively good shape and was a really nice guy, so it hit a lot of us hard. The guy selected to be our new manager was very popular in the company and came in the next day to introduce himself. Seemed like a really cool guy. On the morning with what would have been his first shift at our store, he was killed in a motorcycle accident on his way in. Definitely the craziest work week of my life.
Have you ever had a bad gut feeling about someone and it was right? My cousin was dating an unemployed airline pilot. She was quite wealthy, and very desirable to a man who wasn't into working. He was divorced, living with his mama, and dodging child support payments, blaming his ex-wife for all of his problems. She was diagnosed with cancer. I went to help out when she had her surgery. Since she lived in another state, I stayed with her at her parents' house. They were both too busy to care for her due to their high-powered careers. After she got out of the hospital, I walked into her room to give her some medicine. He was leaning over her body in a way that struck me as strange. He almost looked threatening. It was like he was that Harry Potter character who sucked out your energy and soul. When I saw his face, I can only describe it as a window opened up and I saw evil. I warned her and her family about him. As a result, I was kicked out of their house and shunned for a good 2 years. I was not invited to Christmas and my uncle told me it was because I didn't like the nicest guy he had ever known. Keep in mind this family is quite prominent and he was sucking up to them big time. The next time I saw my cousin, she had a badly broken shoulder. How did this happen? The boyfriend had tried to kill them both by ramming his car at top speed into a tree. She had jumped out of the car and shattered the shoulder. Perhaps unfortunately, he survived as well. Another year passed and my uncle came to me to apologize. He said, "You were right about him." He went on to tell me that my cousin's ex had been arrested and given a long prison sentence for killing his ex-wife, who was also the mother of his children. My uncle felt very lucky the same did not happen to my cousin.
What's the worst cousin story you've ever heard? I have a cousin who is a nurse. She rose to a small bit of TikTok fame by posting videos talking about how she would have no problem unplugging someone's ventilator at the hospital to plug in her phone. She was promptly fired from her job. I was dating this guy in high school for like a year. I have a feeling he's cheating on me and long story short we broke up. I'm catching up with my cousin a couple of weeks later. She's describing how she was seeing this guy and liked him until she found out the guy was cheating on his girlfriend with her. He cheated on me with my cousin. He also had no idea we were related, he just has a type I guess. Doing a hike with two of my cousins and an uncle of ours. One of my cousins found a ball-shaped cactus, and wanted to take it with him for no reason. He didn't
I'm not keeping the miracle baby. I found out I was pregnant 4 weeks ago. I was on birth control and we used protection. It just happened. Shortly after, my boyfriend Seth chose to leave this world. He had been struggling with his mental health for years. I don't think finding out he was going to be a father led him to do this, but the stress didn't help. He and I only talked a couple times about our options. He said he'd support whatever I decided. Then, he left. I'm feeling so much anger and sadness. I feel betrayed and so confused. I feel guilty and then I'm angry for feeling guilty. I love him a lot. Seth is my heart. He's a big part of me. We met in elementary school, stayed friends throughout elementary and middle school, and dated throughout high school. My parents and his parents didn't know about the pregnancy until after Seth left. The two of us were waiting for us to decide what we were going to do. Both of our parents are super religious. He apparently had told his sister, Sierra, and after he left, she told their parents, who told mine. Everyone is saying that this baby is a miracle, that this was meant to be, and they're talking about how Seth lives on. I don't want this baby. I wasn't 100% on the idea of being a mother right now. I want to finish getting a degree, get a career, and live my own life before bringing more life into this world. Now, with circumstances being what they are, I definitely don't want this. I have decided to terminate. When I mentioned this being one of my options, I was flooded with support and understanding of how hard this is. Seth's family and mine have all promised that they'll help me raise this baby. They, my parents, Seth's parents, and even my older brother, have gone as far as offering to adopt the baby and pay me to keep the pregnancy. I can't do that. If I had this baby, I know I'd want to keep it. I couldn't stand aside and watch this person who grew inside me be raised by others. I feel obligated to keep them, but I am just not ready to be a mother, especially not now. Even if I did let them adopt the baby, the child would grow up probably knowing and sensing their parents abandoned them, having their life always connected to the ending of their fathers. I can't imagine how that would feel. I know I can't make our families understand that this isn't about support or money. I want and need a fresh start. I can't spend the rest of my life being reminded of Seth, of our love, and of our ending. I can't make anyone understand how wrong this all feels to me. I can't bring a child into this world, knowing that they'll be seen as an extension of their deceased parent. I can't bring a child into this world knowing that I don't want it. That's not fair or right. I can't imagine how painful it would be for them to know that they were not wanted by the person who should love them most. I feel guilty about making this decision, because I know how much this baby means to them, but I would feel even more guilty having this baby, bringing them into this messed up situation, and abandoning them. I have a friend who agreed to drive me to get the procedure. I would rather do this and regret this choice, than keep a baby I don't want and resent them for the rest of my life. I'm sorry, Seth, but also you don't deserve an apology. You're terrible. I miss you. I love you. I fear I always will.
My son and his roommate have been dating for 20 years and I just found out. How do I tell him that I want to be part of his life even if he's gay? My wife and I divorced when my son was really young, so I basically raised him as a single father. I did my best to raise him well and to be sure he had everything he needed, but I worked a lot of hours and was very career focused. I realize now I was somewhat absent and I have no idea what he went through growing up because I never really asked since I'm fairly emotionally reserved. When he was in high school and in college he had several girlfriends. There was one girl whom I thought he was very serious about, but after they broke up, he never brought any girls home or talked about any. We basically lost contact when he moved away to attend medical school. But one time he visited from break and it was the first time I started to think he could be gay because he was always talking on the phone for hours with his roommate from school. I've heard the way my son flirts before, and somewhere during those hour talks, he would subtly flirt with his roommate. The thing is, my son has never told me that he is gay even to this day, but it has become an unspoken acknowledgement between us. When I accidentally interrupted his conversation one time, he became really nervous and awkward, just like how he used to act when he had a girlfriend over at the house. I've tried asking about his roommate, but the answers are always short, basically that he's doing well. This has made me see that my son doesn't confide in me at all. Somewhere down the line I taught my son that we can't speak about who he is. I'll admit I'm not the most versed in this kind of lifestyle thing, but I don't want to be shut out from his life. I want to tell him that whatever this is, he's perfectly fine in my book and I love him. I want to know him and his roommate, but I don't know how to tell him or what to say. I'm not sure if I should call him his boyfriend. Since he's never said anything to me about being gay, I've just pieced it together over time. In the end, I decided to handwrite him a letter since I've always been best at expressing myself through writing. I wrote about many things and the letter ended up being much longer than anticipated. I began by discussing some of my experiences with my father growing up in ways I realized I had treated my son similarly. I had wanted to do better than my father, who had moments where he could be cruel, but I failed to realize that being too reserved was also a problem and I leaned too far in that direction. After his mother left, I was depressed and I didn't deal with that as well as I should have. I apologized for being absent at work and for being emotionally unavailable at times when he would have needed me the most. I mentioned I'd like to change that in the future, but it's still something that's hard for me to do and I understand he may need his own space. Then I wrote about how even though I probably don't show it well, I do love him with my entire being. There's nothing he could do or be that can change that, and I'm proud of him for many things. I wrote that by extension I love whoever he loves, and his chosen family is family to me as well. All said and done, the letter was several pages long. Then I mailed it, and it was incredibly hard to wait. I decided to text him to let him know I had sent him a letter, as we don't typically write, and it seemed like something that warranted some warning in advance of its arrival so he wouldn't be entirely caught off guard by it. Eventually he sent me a text that he would like to call me at the end of the day. We spoke about everything in the letter. I learned that he had believed I viewed him as a burden, which was disheartening to me as I had always wanted to be a father since I was young, and I never saw him as being a burden, which I told him. We discussed his mother and the plethora of feelings surrounding her. This was a hard topic for me as I still have many unresolved feelings here, but I realized because of this I never explained to him everything that happened. I also learned that he was afraid to disappoint me, so he had put a lot of effort into his career to make me proud of him, as he felt this was the way to impress me and that it would make up for his defects. I brought up that focusing on work over family and interpersonal relationships was one of my bigger regrets, and he admitted that being so career-driven was straining his personal life. With everything going on at the moment, he also expressed that the medical profession was weighing on him, but he hadn't wanted to disappoint me by not being as emotionally strong as he thought I am. By this point in the conversation we had both said a lot of very emotional things. He brought up that he felt it was hard to talk to me because I don't make it clear what I'm thinking, and so he felt it was always easier to only discuss work or accomplishments with me and nothing personal. He felt it was easier to let his relationship be an unspoken understanding between us, as he felt I would be uncomfortable to know anything more. At this point, he confirmed that his roommate is in fact his partner. He said he felt a lot of shame about it. I told him I regretted not reaching out to him sooner, that I'm sorry that my lack of availability had created this distance between us, and that I'm always proud of him and not just for his career. We ended the conversation by discussing seeing each other in person, as it has been almost 10 years since we've actually seen each other. I expressed that I would like to fly out to visit him and his partner of 20 years if he would feel comfortable. I now had a plane ticket for early next month, a date which was quickly approaching. This was a terribly worrying time for me, as I felt the ice was thin and I feared saying or doing the wrong thing would ruin what little connection we had forged. I went to visit them in early June, and I am incredibly overjoyed to say that everything went very well. While there I had several emotionally tough conversations with my son, but I tried to listen from a place of wanting to understand and accepting that I have not always been the best father. While at times I felt incredibly hurt by what he had to say, it was mostly because I felt defensive and upset with myself that I had caused him to feel this way. I wasn't always sure how to respond, but it seemed that verbalizing that I felt this way and that I would need time to give him a proper and reasoned response to some of his comments, rather than a defensive one, was the right thing to do. I would then reflect on my own and give him the response he deserved from me. While there I also had a discussion with his partner, and I am glad that this man has been in my son's life. He is a truly good man, and he did say that he was cautious of me because of the past, but that he hoped we could all move forward from it. While there I also had a discussion with his partner, and I am glad that this man has been in my son's life. He is a truly good man, and he did say that he was cautious of me because of the past, but that he hoped we could all move forward from it. I visited them a couple more times from then on, and I am relieved to say that after those first trips it is almost as though there was never any time we were apart, and we have been talking every day. I have felt so much joy over being accepted back by my son, and for being accepted by his partner, and I am now working on selling my home and moving across the country to be nearer to them and my young grandchildren. This is a move they have welcomed and even suggested to me first. My wife refuses to let me use any protection. I, 28, and my wife, Fiona, 25, have been together for quite a while and already have 2 children, 3 and 1. For me, 2 children is more than enough. Quite frankly, I would have liked to have no children, but that ship has sailed and I can't do anything about that now. My only solace is that I have resolved to myself that I don't want to have any more children going forward. I've tried to have this conversation with Fiona. I swear it, I have tried. But every time I try to bring up the subject of children and how I don't want more, Fiona seems to get really agitated and upset. She tells me that she wants a large family with a lot of children and that she's always wanted that, and that I knew that when I married her, so I should have been prepared for that. And she's not wrong. I used to think I wanted a few children too, but I realize now that it was just culture and society telling me that that was my life's purpose and that I'd find joy and meaning in marriage and children, which was a bald-faced lie. She also seems fixated on this idea that children are a blessing from God and that if God wants us to have more children, then we will have more, and that will be that. I know that she has a good heart, and maybe I'm in the wrong for being so selfish and not wanting more children, but I just cannot and do not want more. Anyway, I've recently been trying to reduce intimate contact of my own volition every time that Fiona's presumably near her period. She doesn't tell me until after it starts. I'm also trying to reduce intimacy in general unless we use protection, but she gets upset if I want to use it. She says that using it is not trusting the Lord, so I'm forced to either shut the whole night down or cave in and give her what she wants. I'm concerned that if we have another child it is going to damage me, our marriage, and my relationship with the current 2 children. I once saw a box of, you know what, in the trash. When I took it out, that I had purchased specifically for intimate protection, and I sneakily rescued it and put the individually wrapped units back in the nightstand. I can't believe she would just do something like that. Normally she's good with communication, but maybe this is a sore spot for her. I confronted her about it and she told me that I should never have bought them in the first place because we don't need them. I just feel trapped. I can't get vasectomy either because that also seems to be a gross violation of Fiona's religious views. I can't leave her because if I do, I'll be forced to pay out child support and I'll lose my good standing among all my friends and broader community and possibly even lose my job. I'm employed within a culture that frowns very heavily on divorce. I have healthy coping mechanisms in place, but over time this stuff is just beginning to bother me and I really don't want to have a 3rd child. I'm not prepared for this.
Today I fucked up by thinking my son was having gay sex when he was just eating hummus. So I have a son and he brought a friend round today. They immediately went to their room and I assumed they would just play some video games or whatever, so I was totally fine leaving them. It was about 30 minutes in when I was walking past. I heard sounds such as, "OMG, that's so good," and "It's so good with that in it," and various sounds. It really sounded like they were having gay sex. I was super weirded out by it, so I quickly went downstairs and waited for his friend to leave. When this friend left an hour or two later, I asked my son what they were doing in his room, because although I don't mind him being gay, and I know it's normal for teenagers to have sex, a condom really should be used, so I planned to confront him about that. However, the answer shocked me to my very core. They weren't having sex, they were eating hummus. I was shocked, and initially didn't believe it. We had never had hummus before, and I asked him to show me the hummus if this was true. So he did, and I ate hummus for the first time, and oh my god, was it good. We experimented with different things in it like bread and carrots, and it was great. Apparently his friend had heard about how he had never had hummus before and thought this was absurd, so had planned a date for a hummus party. So yeah, it ended up being quite a good ending. I discovered how nice hummus was.
Would you date again if your partner died? Me, 36M, and my wife Pam, 34F, have been together for over 10 years. Recently, our friend Kevin, 38M, started dating his new girlfriend. His wife passed away about 3 years ago. Pam and I were in bed together when she started talking about Kevin. She said that she was disappointed in Kevin for dating again so soon. She claimed that Kevin is disrespecting his wife's memory by moving on to someone else. I responded by saying that everyone processes the loss of a partner differently. I told her that I see no problem with Kevin moving on and I'm sure his wife would want him to be happy again. Pam looked shocked and asked me if I really didn't see a problem with it. I told her that I had no issues with it, it is Kevin's life after all. She asked me what I would do if she ever passed away. I told her that I can't give a definitive answer because I'm not planning on that happening. She continued to probe me and asked if I would ever date again or get remarried. I responded, probably. I love you to death and would be heartbroken if you died, but life goes on. I can't stop living my life just because you're gone. She looked drained and said, am I really that easy to get over? I told her, honey, that's not what I meant. I'll always have a special place in my heart for you, but that doesn't mean I can't love anyone else. I would want you to move on too if I died. She just stared at the wall and said, I get it. It's been 3 days and Pam is still depressed over the whole thing. Her sister called me.
I lost my entire friend group after I called one of them out for grooming. I'm 18 and in college. I had a group of friends that hung out every day. It was supposed to be a safe space for everyone, and then this girl, 21 female, started showing signs of grooming behaviors towards boys around 16 and 17. There's a high school program where I go to college, so kids 16 to 18 can go there. Anyways, first it started off weird, with her admitting she has sleepovers with them, and cuddles with them. Eventually, in that private space where we hung out, she'd kiss them on the lips, joke about making love with them, shares her vape with them, jokingly, gropes them, she let them sit in her lap and talk about kinks, and talk about her plans to move in with them afterwards. I watched it all happen and I felt like I could do nothing but watch it. Everyone else seemed to be going along with it. Finally, I called it out. I told people separately what was happening. Eventually it got around, and people got upset at me. She was well liked among the group. They made a group chat talking crap about me, and I had to take a break from that app entirely. I don't think I'll ever have these friends back. Honestly, I didn't even like hanging out with them. Some of them I did, others were just company, and some just made me uncomfortable. They would talk about kinks and dirty talk in the presence of children, not just high schoolers, an actual 10-year-old, someone's little brother, and just pass inappropriate boundaries that shouldn't have been passed with anyone, especially minors. But, losing that part of me that I hung out with almost every day of the week took a toll on me. I've made a report to the school people about this situation and it's going well so far. I want to find new friends, but I feel like when you manually look for them, you never find them. I just feel lonely, I guess, and bored. I'm trying to express myself through music, get a job, and focus on my studies. Just can't shake the feeling that I did something wrong. I know I didn't, but I'm feeling down. I don't know what I want.
I think my boyfriend is trying to baby trap me. I've been dating my boyfriend for a year. I live with him. My family life isn't great. My dad has been out of the picture for as long as I remember and my mom is very mentally unstable. She has been diagnosed BPD but isn't on treatment. She has always been a jealous person. She showers you with love and affection, but if you don't do the same for her she will blow up. I've seen her do that to all of her partners and to me. She has been against me doing anything other than staying home with her for as long as I remember, against me having friends, studying for school, working out, etc., always putting me down for anything. She has had better and worse times and the last year has been one of her downs. She went absolutely mental when she found out I had a boyfriend. She tried to prohibit me seeing him, made scenes whenever I spent time with him saying I am changing her, etc., went as far as trashing my room when I left for a whole day. One day I came home and she told me I either stay here with her and broke up with him or when I leave she will change the locks and never let me come back. I called my boyfriend crying and he offered for me to move in with him. I agreed. She has sent me picture of her burning everything I had in my room, that she never wants to see me again and that I am a terrible daughter, Made posts on Facebook calling me an immoral woman, etc. Everything has been going okay until a week ago. I came back from school and told him we had vocational orientation, and that a nurse had came to tell us about her career. I told him though what she did was really cool and I would love to be a nurse. He asked me if you had to study to be a nurse and I said you had. It was about 3 years I think. He then asked me when would we get married and I laughed and said I don't know, maybe after I finish the career. He frowned and said that he wanted to have kids young. I told him we could, just not that young. We still had plenty of time and though it was best for both of us to have careers before having kids. There wasn't a rush. He said he was running late for work and the conversation was cut short. He has since then done something really weird in which he starts talking semi-sarcastically about when I start studying and asking me things like if I'm going to go to parties or make more friends or if I'll still have time for him. When I ask him why is he talking like that, he will deny using any tone. He has also started to try and convince me to have intimacy without a rubber, saying that he will pull out. One time he even went as far as ignoring me asking him to put a rubber on and trying to go in me and he stopped just because I screamed at him. 3 days ago I saw him doing something with the drawer where we keep our stash of rubbers open. When he saw me he closed it quickly. I grew suspicious and went to look at them after he left. Some of them had little dots like they had been poked. There were just 1/4 of them, so I feel like if I bring this up he will deny it and say some were just broken. The other day I asked him that if he wanted to have intimacy without a rubber maybe I should start doing hormonal birth control and he said those pills make you fat and he doesn't want me being fat. He also made fun of me saying I am being so dramatic about being scared of getting pregnant like it was a curse or something. I've though about talking it out with him and reassuring him that me wanting to go to college doesn't change anything on our relationship and we still have plenty of time to form a family, but maybe I'm being naive. I really do love him and I don't want to end this relationship. Up until now he has been the biggest blessing. I don't know what else to do. I don't have access to my own money to get my own birth control without him. I live with him. I don't have anywhere else to go.
I want to leave my husband, even though he tells me he loves me every day. I, 35 female, have been married to my husband, 29 male, for almost 8 years now, but I feel like I can't waste more of my life being with him. He wants to keep fighting to save the relationship, but I don't feel like there is anything left to save. A little background. We were both raised in the same high-control religion that didn't want us to be dating and tried to force us apart. I didn't feel like they had the right to do so I got rebellious and just eloped with him. As they can't separate a married couple, they did. However, disfellowship and shun us, meaning we lost all our friends and family contact, was minimal. I felt like it was my husband and I against the world and thought we would be strong together for having fought together to escape the religion and find our place in the world. Things didn't quite work out like that. While I worked to process my feelings and put the past behind me, he got consumed with hate and was always complaining. For the first couple of years, I worked to provide for us while he was unemployed and gaming all day, not doing any household chores. We decided together that we both needed to get an education that would secure us financial freedom when we both got a decent paying job afterward. I worked hard on my education, where I had a paid internship and studied simultaneously. My husband, on the other hand, put in minimal effort in his studies and got several warnings about being kicked out because of low attendance. With only 1 semester left, he dropped out for mental reasons. This was also my last semester, and I now had the added stress of him dropping out, his breakdown, my grandmother dying, and my brother being terminally ill. It got so bad that I even broke down in front of my boss, crying because the pressure was so hard on me and I was getting so far behind. I didn't think I would make it. I'm so grateful that I have an amazing boss who helped me so much and almost carried me through the rest of my study, so that I could graduate last summer and also gave me a full-time job at the same place right after. It is now almost 1.5 years ago since my husband dropped out, and he is still just home, doing nothing other than gaming, drinking, and sleeping. I had to drag him to a psychiatrist after he kept talking about harming himself. After a line of sessions and medical treatment, they say that he is no longer clinically depressed and recommended that he talk with a psychologist to work through past traumas and also get a job, because it would be good for him to get out of the house. He did none of that. He is just back to gaming, drinking even more and sleeping. During all of this, I have become more lonely in our marriage. When I told my husband about feeling so overwhelmed, like I couldn't breathe, he just accused me of piggyback riding on his depression to get attention. A few months ago, we had a big fight because I felt something he did was very inconsiderate. During the heat of it, he admitted that he was so embarrassed about my physical appearance that he had even canceled a gaming night at our place with some friends he met online. I was so disappointed. How dare he be embarrassed of me, the woman who has supported him for all these years and fought to get an education to give us a better life, while he, for the most part, has just been a lazy slob with a drinking problem, neither contributing to the household financially or by doing any chores. Ever since this argument, I have refused to tell him I love him and pulled away all affection. I was so hurt by this, I began thinking about how I would be better off alone than in a marriage with someone who tells me he loves me but does nothing to show it. To me, it feels like empty words. My brother recently passed, and we buried him last week. My husband hates that this has resulted in me spending way more time with my family, who I had gone low contact on since we left the religion. Losing my brother kinda puts everything into perspective, and I think most of my family agrees that differences in opinion about religion and life choices shouldn't keep us apart. After the burial, my closest family was gathered in my family home. I don't know why my husband insisted on coming when he always says how much he hates my family including my brother, but I guess he wanted to look like a supportive husband. However, he drank way too much, enough for people to notice. On the way home, he started complaining about a joke my mother had made that he found very rude and talked about what a horrible woman she is. Then he started talking about how my dead brother probably had some tendencies. I was so offended that he dared to talk about my brother that way on the day we buried him. When we got home, he wanted to continue drinking, but I said that I thought he had enough. Then he got angry, complaining how he felt trapped in a loveless marriage and I couldn't even tell him I loved him. He set an ultimatum, saying that I had to say that I loved him or it was over between us. I didn't want to be pressured like that, so I just told him, so be it, and slept on the couch that night. The next day I go to work and stop on the way home to buy moving boxes, just to show him that I take this serious. He is in total disbelief. He calls his mother, who comes over and tries to smooth things over and says we are so good together and we just need to talk out our differences. His mother is a wonderful woman, but I also know she of course does what is best for her son. He definitely needs me more than I need him, and without me it would again fall on his parents to take care of him, since he seems to be unable to do anything on his own. For the past week since this incident, he has been so nice and acting like nothing has happened. He keeps hugging and kissing me and telling me he loves me. Kinda feels like love bombing to convince me to stay, but I am still looking for an apartment, and my family is on standby to help me move whenever I find a place. I try not to confront my husband or reject him too harshly, just so that we can keep the peace while I plan my way out. I kinda feel like a bad person for leaving him while he is going through depression, but I also feel like 8 years is a long time to wait for him to figure out his shit. I feel like I am pushing back my own issues because I need to be strong for both of us. I have always put everyone else's needs before mine, but I really just want to be selfish now for once in my life and take care of me. Thanks to anyone who has listened to my rant. I just needed to vent how I feel and maybe get other people's thoughts on it. I just feel like going crazy dealing with this on my own.
Am I the a-hole for never wanting to take my girlfriend to restaurants? I've been with my wonderful girlfriend for a few years now, and we usually get along great, aside from this current issue. She's a food genius. She can taste and smell a dish and then turn around and recreate it, or even make it better than the original. That's not it, either. She heard about a lost family recipe and the following week, I'm eating my grandmother's homemade sausage again for the first time in 15 years. It's gotten to the point where I don't see any point in going out to eat, pretty much ever, except maybe her birthday. The only places we really go for date night is ramen because she can't figure out how to make the noodles, and sushi. Our anniversary was recently, and I had noticed that our local fish counter was selling sushi-grade fish, along with the rolling mats and nori, so I suggested that we have homemade sushi for our anniversary dinner before going out, and she got upset and said, I'm not learning how to make sushi because then I'll never get a real date ever again. We ended up going out instead. It kinda took me by surprise that she got so mad, though. She's lightly mentioned wanting to go out occasionally to places like Olive Garden because she likes the red sauce, or other places because she likes the food, and now that I'm thinking about it, she's gotten kinda gloomy because I've asked her to cook on date nights instead of going out more often. She also brought up that food she cooks tastes better to me than to her because she's tasting and smelling it while it cooks, so her senses are dulled by the time it's served. She has the most acute sense of smell and taste I've ever seen, so I kinda think it's just an excuse. I just don't think it's worth it to go out and pay restaurant food prices when we can stay home for home food prices and have food that's just as excellent. It's like having a private chef of my very own for cheap. My girlfriend is accusing me of being gay because I didn't cheat on her. So we've been together for about 2 years now. She's always been the jealous type, but it's never bothered me because I'm not a very social person, so I never felt she would have a reason to be jealous. She knows my schedule and I have the Life 360 app on my phone, so she knows my location at all times. I have this app because one day my father got into a car accident in a remote area and it saved his life. According to my girlfriend, women often hit on me. I really don't believe that is the case because I'm an average looking dude and don't put myself out there like that, but she insists this is the case. She has made multiple attempts to catfish me. She tried Facebook, but I won't accept a friend request or message from someone I don't know. She tried Instagram and it was the same. So then she tried Reddit, where I'm likely to respond to a message from a stranger. It was painfully obvious what she was trying to do. I've been using Reddit for a decade and know what normal behavior looks like. She sent me a message like, I saw your post and you're so funny. Do you want to hook up? I live in your city, and attached a picture of an attractive woman. I knew it was bull crap and just replied, you're not fooling anyone. The rest of the day she gave me the cold shoulder and had an attitude. When I called her out, she said if you were a real man, you wouldn't have even responded to the message. I handed her my phone and passcode and told her she can search everything. She did. She gave it back to me about an hour later. At this point I asked, did you find what you were looking for? While laughing. Now she is accusing me of being gay. She didn't find any messages between me and other women. My search history is mostly about the shows I watch and recipes I want to cook. Also some medical questions about my pets. She said if I'm not seeking out other women, I must be gay. What the heck am I supposed to do? I did nothing wrong and somehow I'm still the bad guy. She told me to leave my house the day before Christmas because she doesn't want to see me. Also called her family and said I'm gay, and now her brother wants to fight me.
My entitled mother wore a wedding dress at my brother's wedding and tried to marry him. My mom and I have always had a difficult relationship. I'm her scapegoat and my brother is her golden child. He can really do no wrong in her eyes. I'm expected to do housework every time I visit while my brother sits around doing nothing. My mom expects me to cater to his every need if we both visit at the same time. Last Christmas, we were all going to my mom's house and she swore up and down that she did not need any help from anybody. Well, my mom actually gave me the wrong arrival time because she wanted me to get there earlier and help her out. Normally I wouldn't mind, especially because I did offer to help before, but I was the only one there. I felt like a caterer instead of a guest. I set up the entire house ready for Christmas and then she had me serve everybody at the table while she sat down and complained about how exhausted she was from all the work she did. Mind you, I basically did everything around the house. Then, she wanted me to wash everybody's dishes and told all of her guests to not help me because I could handle it and they're just dishes. She bragged about how if she could make this entire house spotless all on her own, I could get my pretty hands dirty for one day. And it didn't even stop there for the night. All the men started watching some football game and my mom made me give my brother anything he asked for. He even went as far as asking for a massage, though he swears he was just messing around because he noticed how my mom was making me do everything, but my mom would not let me say no and insisted I give him the massage regardless of what either of us said. It was such a humiliating experience for both of us. After that, I just stopped visiting and I've been avoiding her. I only talk to her out of necessity, which still isn't a lot. Despite all of this, my brother and I are still very close and I'm good friends with my sister-in-law. My mom, however, has treated my sister-in-law terribly ever since she started dating my brother 5 years ago. During the Christmas party, I even heard my mom badmouth my sister-in-law and the only reason she doesn't like her is because she thinks she stole her golden child away from her. It didn't help that my brother announced that when they get married, they're going to move to a different state, far, far away, from our mom. It was actually my brother's idea since he always told me he wanted to leave this state because we've lived here our whole lives. But, my mom has placed all the blame on my sister-in-law and accused her of trying to break their bond by making them move. Things only got worse when my brother and sister-in-law had their wedding in October of this year. My mom showed up in a floor-length white wedding dress. She had this poop-eating grin the entire time and it was so obvious she was proud and happy of herself when she saw my sister-in-law on the verge of tears. At that point, I had enough of my mom berating my sister-in-law all the time because of her weird feelings for my brother. My sister-in-law is the sweetest person I know and I could not have my horrible mother ruin her wedding. So without thinking, I just grabbed a bottle of red wine and dumped the whole thing down my mom's front. She flipped out and screamed at me that I had ruined her special day. Hold up, what? I asked her what she meant by that, but she wouldn't answer me. She just kept shouting that I was awful and she always hated me. She said this is why she preferred my brother to me, because I was crazy. These were all things I knew so I didn't let it affect me. However, she had exposed her true colors in front of all the guests. My mom had been called out on her favoritism countless times, but she always said she loved me and my brother the same. But she had just told the families the truth and I was so happy. As for my brother, he kicked my mom out of the wedding and said it was going to take him a lot of time to trust her again. My mom went home crying and she actually didn't attempt to come back. After the wedding, my brother talked to me in private and apologized for never standing up for me. He said he liked being the favorite and all the extra attention he got, but our mom went too far today. He said he hadn't realized he was enabling her behavior, but his wife had talked to him about the favoritism and how it needed to stop. He even confessed that he was rethinking inviting my mom, but his wife said he should give her one last chance to be a mature adult. Trying to upstage his wife was the last straw, so he's going to cut contact with her for now. What's the worst time you incorrectly guessed someone's Halloween costume? I own a bar and often work the register. Every year at this time I remember my F-up from a couple years ago. At my bar, customers order at a designated spot at the bar where the POS is and the person working the register takes and expedites the drink orders. It's kind of fast foody but also super fast and convenient. I was working the register on Halloween a few years back. I was commenting on everyone's costume as they came up and telling the bartenders drink orders based on customers' costumes. Spider-Man. What can we do for you? We need 6 shots of tequila at table 4 for Jason Mask, etc. Dude comes up holding his hands in front of him at chest level. Fingers are all crooked like. He's not wearing any other kind of costume. Many customers are not wearing costumes, of course. I don't know why, but my brain registers that this is some kind of low-effort costume. He comes up, and I say, "Hey. Weird hands guy, what can I get for you?" He looks at me all taken aback. Then orders a beer. I relay the order to one of the bartenders. "We need a beer for Creepy Hands Man." I look back to the customer as he struggles with his wallet, which is on a lanyard tucked in his shirt, then I know. He's not Weird Hands guy for Halloween. This is his everyday situation. I just unknowingly made fun of a disabled person. Needless to say, I never commented on a costume ever again. It still keeps me up at night.
I hooked up with my sister's fiancé. A few weeks ago, I, 19 male, went on a guy's trip with some friends to celebrate the beginning of our summer break. We were out late and got quite intoxicated. At some point in the night I got into my habit of checking Grindr whenever we stopped at a different spot. One bar, in particular, is relevant here. It was one right across the street from the lodge that me and my mates were staying at. This was our last stop of the night before we were supposed to crash, and while we were there I got a message from a faceless profile. I don't normally respond to those, but it was late, I was intoxicated and ready to make bad decisions. The guy told me he was staying at the same place we were and if I wanted to hook up. I thought I might as well. It's the last stop of our night and I'd probably be able to meet up with the others right after. So I told the guys where I'd be and excused myself. I met up with the guy in the lobby and followed him to his room. While I was following him, I had a faint feeling of familiarity, though I was too intoxicated and horny to process it at the time. Eventually, we got to his room, did the deed, and I met up with my mates back at our room. The next day when it was time to head home, I got a call from my sister, Allie 23 female, asking how our trip went. We went back and forth until she asked if I saw her fiancé, Tyler 22 male, since apparently he was staying at the same place as us for a business trip. I told her I hadn't, then joked that he could be the guy I hooked up with. We laughed it off and went on with our conversation. Later on the train home I reopened Grindr, and found that the guy I hooked up with that night sent me a photo album, which I hadn't viewed right before we met. All his pictures up until that point remained faceless, but the album had pictures with his face. I scrolled through and it started to kick in. Yep, that's Tyler, alright, he has a distinct tattoo and piercing on his jaw and nose that can't be mistaken. Am I the a-hole for breaking up with my girlfriend because she's pregnant? I had been with my now ex for a little over 3 months. I always made sure we used lots of precaution. She was on birth control and I always used condoms. I wanted to avoid a child. I have known for a long time that I do not want children. I find them annoying and they would severely limit my ability to do the things I enjoy, traveling, outdoor stuff, etc. Unfortunately for me, my ex didn't have her period when she was supposed to, and it turns out she's now pregnant. She came to me and told me she was pregnant. The first thing I did was suggest an abortion. We don't live in a state where it's legal, so I offered to pay for her flight and hotel and told her I'd be happy to come with her to get it done. I have a stable job and make good money, so it wouldn't be too much of a hit for me. She works as a receptionist and doesn't make a lot, so I figured it would be better for me to pay. That's when she told me she was hoping to keep it and that she wanted me to help her raise the kid as its father. I have no intention of being a father. Beyond just my dislike of children, I'm not ready for that. I made it very clear that I didn't want the baby, but she kept insisting that I'd have a change of heart once it's born and to just try it out. After a long exchange, I told her that if she intended to keep the baby, I would not act as a father. I broke up with her and told her that I would pay child support once it's born, but that I expect her to respect my wishes and keep the child away from me. Since then she's been frantically texting me, begging me to come back and telling me she'd forgive me. She sent me voicemails crying. It does hurt to see, but I haven't responded. The other day she texted me saying how she can't raise the kid alone and how I'm basically forcing her to get the abortion just by leaving. She called me an asshole, an abuser, and a sexist. She ended the text begging me to talk again. I certainly feel shitty. I really liked her and we had a good relationship before this, but I just don't want to be a father. I'm already bitter about the fact that I'll have to pay child support for 18 years, which will somewhat limit me financially. I also feel it isn't right for a parent who doesn't want their child to be involved. I just end up taking the pent-up anger and bitterness out on the child who is ultimately innocent, which I feel isn't right. With all this said, I come here to ask, am I the a-hole? I certainly feel like one, but I also stand by what I did.
What is the most satisfying thing you've done for a revenge? A guy I had been seeing had hurt me, physically, a new experience for me, and one I definitely did not intend to repeat. When I immediately dumped him, he left messages threatening to beat me again if I didn't stop telling mutual friends about it. Didn't stop me, but it seriously raised the threat level from him. We were both involved in the local ballroom dancing community. To reduce the immediate threat, I switched to a dance studio he never attended. 2 weeks later, he showed up at a class while I was there. To avoid him, I begged them to let me leave through the office, something normally forbidden. When I explained why, they made it clear that he would not be welcome there again. Phew. A safe place. It would be safe later, anyway, but not that night. I walked out into the cold night air, shaking almost as badly as the night I fled his home, half naked and bruised. I wasn't as much afraid as really angry, fuming, furious, enraged. I was trying to keep things low-key and relatively civilized, and he'd managed to intrude on one of my major passions and joys, dancing. He had bought a brand new shit brown Buick a few months earlier, and it was parked right next to my car in the parking lot the studio shared with the convenience store next door. Without even really thinking, I went into the store and bought a couple of big tubes of superglue. I went back out and superglued every single moving part on his car. I really squirted it in good, no half measures here. I glued the trunk lock. I glued his gas cap lock, and the gas cap threads as well. I glued his windows right up onto the gaskets, all the way around. I glued down his windshield wipers. I unscrewed the air caps on each tire, glued the valves, then replaced the caps with a little glob of glue on the threads. I glued the hood latch. I squeezed the little bit of super glue remaining into the door gaskets. Then I got into my car and went home. It was assuredly mean, evil, ill-intentioned. Pick your word and I'm sure it applies. People speak of remorse and shame for such actions. But, my dear friends, I have rarely had such a satisfying experience, and I hope the joy I felt that night stays with me forever.
My sister catfished her baby daddy to sue for child support. My sister Maria was the youngest sibling before I was born and was one of 2 daughters that had kids in the family. Maria had her son Jay just a couple months after turning 24, and our other sisters gave her a lot of poop for it, not just because they thought she was too young, even though one of them had a baby at 16, but because the man she was with at the time was awful. Maria met her baby daddy Nate when dating apps were first becoming a big thing. At first, it seemed like this was her dream man. They were both outdoorsy and had lots in common. She knew he had 2 kids from a previous marriage but didn't mind. But after a while he started to show his true colors. He'd manipulate her, isolate her, verbally abuse her, lock her out of the house in the cold. They'd break up, she'd leave, he'd say he'd change, they'd get back together, and the cycle would start over. Eventually she left for good after finding out he was still married and had 2 other women on the side. while she was just a couple weeks postpartum. Ever since, Nate is as close to a deadbeat dad that you can get. He picks and chooses when he wants to see his son Jay, harasses my sister over text when he feels so inclined, and has managed to elude her attempts at hitting him with child support, switching jobs quickly and lying about his whereabouts. This has been going on for as long as my nephew has been alive. Last night, I went out for a drink after dinner with her, and she told me that while she was out of town for her best friend's wedding, they stole a woman's photos from Google, made a fake Facebook account, and sent him a friend request. He accepted immediately. She found nude photos of a porn star and cropped her face out, sent them, and immediately got a PP pic back. They talked back and forth for a while before she said, "I want to send you something sexy. You'll love it. Where can I send it to you?" That stupid man gave a fake woman his address over Facebook Messenger, with my sister on the other end. Literally the next day on the drive home, did she get in contact with her attorney and provide an address to finally serve Nate with papers. He's in for a big surprise. Update: yeah, so my sister got shot when she showed up to Nate's address. She's fine, don't worry, she's in the hospital with non-fatal injuries, but now Nate is imprisoned and he will be forced to pay child support. What disgusting event of work will you never forget? It was a relatively slow day, so my coworkers and I were lounging about in the lobby when an older gentleman, dressed all in white shorts, shirt, socks, sneakers. This is an important detail, hurries into the bathroom. We all think nothing of it because we've seen people rush in before, probably so they don't miss their movie. A little bit of time progresses and we forget all about him. Until a middle-aged black guy walks in, and in the smoothest voice I've ever heard asks me this: "Hey my man, mind if I use the bathroom?" I responded with absolutely sir, go right ahead. No less than 10 seconds later he comes out, and what he told me next will be forever burned into my brain. "Yo my man, someone didn't quite make it." He then just strolled out of the theater. No man could have prepared me for what I saw. It was a duty explosion. The stench hit me so hard I actually started screaming, and I got louder as I noticed the amount of crap all over the place. I called my coworkers over to witness the aftermath of the fecal storm, and they too became loud and shocked at what had transpired. At one point, while we were all preparing to assault the scene with cleaning supplies, the perpetrator tried to sneak out of the theater, solid snake style, which was next to impossible because the bathroom was directly opposite the exit. The man's previously pristine, white clothing had turned poop yellow/brown, with it trickling down his legs, staining his white tube socks and sneakers the same vile color. As the cleanliness offensive against the terrorists progressed, we finally opened the stall where the main attack happened. It was like this guy's booty didn't want to live anymore and blew its booty brain out. It covered the walls, the toilet, and the floor in the putrid stank. To top it all off, he left his fucking crap-soiled tighty whities draped over the toilet bowl. Update: am I a bad mom? So yesterday at about 5 or 6, my husband decided he wanted his wife back, not his son, just his wife. So he showed up at my parents' house and started beating on the door. We told him to leave, he didn't. Eventually he started fighting my dad, saying he just wants his wife back. Eventually the police were called and my dad pressed charges against him for assault. But other than that, my little boy has started doing this absolutely adorable thing when we are going to sleep. When he snuggles up to me at night, he gives me a small kiss on my nose and tells me I'm the best mama and that he loves me more than Mr. Kitty, his stuffed kitty that he carries everywhere. It makes me so happy to see him smile, and he giggles so much about everything. He's so cute. I love my son so much. Anyway, I've been talking to a lawyer for the past week and we are working on the divorce proceedings as well as custody and possible restraining orders. I am also trying to take my house back before my soon-to-be ex-husband does something to it. For those concerned, we have picked up the cats and all 4 of them are comfy in my parents' house. For those who want an update on my son, he's doing great. His grandma got him some little dinosaur toys yesterday and he played with them until he physically couldn't anymore. He's also started trying to feed me stuff. Also, if I tell him he's my handsome boy, he tells me I'm his pretty mama. I love my son. Alright, so over the past week I've been talking with a lawyer and compiling evidence. My soon-to-be ex-husband has still been trying to get me back. At one point he even agreed to get therapy. I know he won't. Besides that, you lose a lot of love and respect for someone after you see them hurt your son and hurt your dad.
I'm going to leave my fiancé for my boyfriend. 6 months ago my, female 25, fiancé, male 28, asked if I would be willing to have an open relationship. I agreed. Everything was okay until like 3 months ago when he asked if we could switch from open to poly. I agreed again. He started dating a girl from work, and I started dating a guy from my gym. Now this guy, male 26, is so different than my fiancé. He takes me on dates every week. He brings me flowers and food at work. He texts me just to say hi. He's sweet and affectionate. My fiancé, however, we've been together for 4 years. He only gets me flowers for my birthday. He's never affectionate. His idea of a date is playing board games or watching The Witcher. They are very different in bed too. With my fiancé most of the times, lovemaking is a chore. He's fast and rough and then he goes to watch TV. My boyfriend, however, is very tender. He takes his time and he checks if I'm enjoying it. He cuddles with me after and brings me snacks. I was talking to my mom about this and she asked me which one makes me happier, and I guess it clicked. I like the way my boyfriend treats me while my fiancé is more of a roommate at this point. After my talk with my mom I decided to talk to my fiancé as well. I just told him that I wish he would be more affectionate with me. He just shrugged and said he isn't into chick flick. So I guess I'm going to break up with my fiancé because I don't want to marry a man that never takes me out or buy me flowers or holds my hand. I want someone that shows their emotions. I don't know if me and my boyfriend are going to work out since it's still new, but at least now I know I have options. I grew up around men that were emotionally unavailable, and most women in my family constantly told that men aren't affectionate, so I guess I kinda believed it. My first 2 boyfriends were like this as well. They didn't like showing affection, and my fiancé is the 3rd guy I've been with. It feels good to know not all men are like my mom made me think they were. I'm on my way to have dinner with my fiancé, and I'm going to call it the engagement. Update: I was super nervous to have the talk with my fiancé, but apparently at dinner it wasn't just us. He invited his parents and didn't tell me. I wanted to have the conversation with him privately, but his mom started talking about the wedding. She had a bunch of flower arrangements, dresses and venues printed out, and she was going to buy a dress tomorrow. I got overwhelmed and ended up telling them the wedding is off. I tried to be as gentle as I could, but my fiancé freaked out when I gave my reasons, that I don't feel loved and that I want someone that shows their affection, and made a scene, so we were kicked out. He left to go home like 10 minutes ago. I'm still in the parking lot with his parents. They are trying to call him. I'm going to drive them home, and then I guess I have to get ready for round 2 when I get home. Update number 2. We had a huge fight, and he confessed he only wanted to open the relationship because he wanted to sleep with his coworker without being a cheater, and then wanted a poly relationship because he developed feelings for her. And he called me bitch for dumping him because I'm a big baby who needs attention. Apparently I need to grow up because real men don't get emotional. Update number 3. My now ex-fiancé called and begged me to come home to talk because he's sorry and he didn't mean what he said, and because real men don't get emotional. He started crying when I said no and that he can call his girlfriend if he wants to talk to someone. Update 4. I talked with my boyfriend and we're going to close the relationship. He was thinking about it for a while but was afraid to ask, so he was happy when I suggested it. My boyfriend helped me move all my things out of the apartment I shared with my ex. My ex has called and texted me all night and 2 blocked him BC. Honestly, it kinda scared me. My ex's girlfriend came to see me at work. She was worried I ended things because of her. We talked a bit and assured her it wasn't because of her. We also talked about my ex and his lack of showing emotions, and she now reconsidering their relationship because she also wants someone to show their love, and she was thinking he didn't because it was still new. She thought in time he'll get more comfortable, but after we talked she wasn't so sure anymore. A lot of people keep saying my boyfriend will turn into my ex. Why? Why do you think that? Do you have magical powers to see the future? And if he does, so what? I should stay in a relationship where I don't feel loved just because my next relationship will not work. Like I said in my post and in the comments, even if it doesn't work, at least now I know I have options. I also had a few people asking if my ex was always like this or if he changed. He was always like this.
Update: my wife kicked me out after finding my secret Reddit account. My pregnant wife kicked me out, accusing me of cheating on her and getting my coworker pregnant after she found my secret Reddit account, even though there were obvious differences in the post as well as when the post was made. That night I drove 1 hour to my in-laws. My family is not close. When I showed up, they wouldn't let me in until I started crying. I know, not manly, and explained that I am worried for my wife's mental state and child's safety and asked if they would please hear me out. They finally let me in. I put everything on the table. They did not hear the full story from my wife. She said that I'd cheated and then got in her face blaming everything on her. None of it was true. I showed them the post that she suspected was made by me, then pointed out the obvious differences. I next pulled up footage from one of our outside cameras that caught some of the argument, caught audio only. They could tell I was not the aggressor and she was not acting like her normal self. While in the camera app, I noticed a car was parked across the street. One I recognized, that I should have never seen again. Up to this point I realized that I also messed up. My wife is off some of her medications and switched to different ones for the pregnancy. I have spent more time at work lately due to trying to save up more money for our future. This means I have been neglecting my wife. I now know why my wife was acting this way. My wife had a friend/coworker that never approved of the relationship between my wife and I. We will call her Jerk. She kept trying to get between us by causing fights or bringing up false red flags of mine. Then she confessed her love for my wife and said she wanted me out of the picture. When she told my wife this, my wife told me and decided to cut contact and move to a different department. I told my in-laws that we have to go to my wife. My in-laws contacted my wife and told her that they were coming over. She accepted it. She was crying and still very emotional. My in-laws told me to give them a few minutes to talk to her first. When we pulled up, it was about 8 or 9 at night. From my in-laws, when they walked in, my wife was crying to Jerk, who was happy we had a fight. They knew about what that woman tried to do in the past and told her to give them a few minutes alone. She agreed after some arguing. They had her talk about her side again and gave the evidence from my point of view. It turns out that Jerk was taking advantage of the fact that my wife is pregnant. I'm working more hours, my wife is on different medications, and the info from our past that painted me in a bad way. She also had been showing her other evidence, like somehow she had a picture of me and my female pregnant coworker when we went out to get food for the team. My wife accepted this and kicked Jerk out and blocked her again. We are going to try to get a restraining order placed on her. Things are better but not back to the way we were. I got her a doctor's appointment on Tuesday about her medicine and scheduled an emergency therapy session with her therapist on Wednesday. For now I'm sleeping in the guest room and trying my best to not break up our 8+ year marriage. I feel betrayed that she would take someone's side who has already proven they will do anything to get what they want, lie about her being no contact, then accuse me of cheating and not listen to what I have to say. But at the same time, I love my wife. I know that she was not in her proper state of mind. I want to get marriage counseling, but the wait list is over 2 months long. I will tell my boss on Monday about cutting back on hours to help my wife. I have saved up time off that should help. Luckily, our company provides 3 months of paternity leave. Hopefully we can get things right. My in-laws have also been staying close just in case my wife needs them or if they have to step in. I have told my actual pregnant coworker what happened. Her and her husband are understanding of the situation. They said that they would be willing to sit down with us and talk. I believe she is due in the coming months, so she won't be at work for a while. I won't let anything happen to my family. We are getting things together to give to their HR department. My wife will probably be quitting soon for the baby as well. We have to wait until after the baby is born before we make any big moves. I'm going to bring it up to my wife tonight. My boss is an understanding man. He is actively searching for good positions that I can transfer to, as well as reaching out to his contacts to see if I could get a position elsewhere. I hope that after my baby is born and she is back on her proper meds that I will have my wife back.
I think my boyfriend just proved the orange peel theory for me. So I, 17 female, and my boyfriend, 17 male, have been together for almost 1 year and 2 months, but before we got together we had already known each other for about 1.5 years, and we had been very close, but that's another long story. We're both very happy in this relationship and everything is great. However, I've been seeing the orange peel theory going around a lot lately and wanted to test it out for myself. For those of you who don't know what the orange peel theory is, it's basically that you ask your partner to do a simple task you can easily do yourself, like peeling an orange. If your partner is willing to do it for you without judgment, that means that they deeply care about you. If they don't, then you might want to rethink your relationship, or something along those lines. I had been thinking of how I was going to test the orange peel theory on him, because he knows I don't really eat oranges, nor do I eat a lot of fruit anyway for that matter, so if I were to ask him to peel me a fruit of some kind, he'd see right through me and think something was going on. But one day, I was over at his house and he was kind of sick. It was around 1 in the afternoon at that time, so he wanted to eat something. He said that he was going to make a fruit bowl or something like that and asked me if I wanted one as well. I said that he didn't have to do that since I didn't want him to do more than he had to. He then asked me what I had for breakfast. I said that I had a little bit of cornflakes, a vitamin D pill and some tea. He then determinedly responded with, "I'm making you something as well." I immediately told him that he didn't have to and that I wasn't really hungry either. He said that I had to eat something since I had so little for breakfast. I said that I could then do it myself, so that he didn't have to do it. He then said that he wanted to do it for me and that I didn't have to do anything. I then again said, "But I can do it myself, it's no big deal." After I said that, he replied with, "I know you can do it yourself, but that's not the point. Just like making coffee, making breakfast, biking home, which only takes 6 minutes, keep that in mind. I know you can do that yourself, but I want to do it for you. It makes me feel good." I then brought up the one time he didn't bike me home because he was too tired, and how I didn't mind. He then said, "I know about that," and I felt awful. I reassured him and told him that it was okay and how nothing happened on the way home anyway. He said, "I don't care. I should bring you home no matter what." I felt terrible and I shouldn't have treated you that way. I told him once again that it was okay and that he shouldn't worry about it. I also said to him that I of course like that he does all these things for me, but that he doesn't have to do all that. He responded with, "I know I don't have to, but I want to. It makes me happy to do all these things for you. You make me want to do all these things. I love you." I already knew that I was to marry him one day and that I'm in the right hands with him, but after he said that, that made me feel a dozen times better about it. Though I sometimes feel like I don't do enough for him, he reassures me that I already gave him more than anyone else has ever given him before and that he's grateful for me. Saying things like "thank you for being mine," and stuff like that. I love him so much and I hope we can spend the rest of our lives together. My husband is love bombing me after accusing me of cheating, because he heard I'll be coming into money. As I'm writing this, I'm filled with anger, betrayal, and disbelief, and I need to let all my feelings out. The man I thought I loved deeply let me down in the worst possible way. All these feelings began when I was around 34 weeks pregnant. My husband, who I'm now planning to divorce, accused me of cheating on him and asked for a paternity test. This accusation broke my heart and ruined our trust. That's when I decided it was time for a divorce. My daughter was born shortly after, in the middle of all this mess. Moving on with life, I relocated back to my hometown about 6 weeks ago due to an unexpected and very large inheritance. A family member passed away and left behind a good amount of money. This unexpected money seemed like it could make life better for my daughter and me at first glance. However, the money was technically left to my older sister, as the will was last updated in 1992 when I was too young to be considered. For the time being, my sister is keeping the money safe until my husband is legally out of my life. But here's where things took a turn for the worst. About 3 weeks ago, my husband found out about the inheritance. I suspect from an unhappy cousin who is left out of the will. Now, he's bombarding me with love and acts of kindness, which I think is manipulative behavior known as love bombing. He's even trying to convince the judge in our divorce to allow a period of reconciliation. Also, he's started lying to our friends, saying his brother tricked him into asking for the paternity test. He's painting me as the villain, accusing me of taking away his daughter over something so small. I'm really hurting, I used to love this man so much, we've been together for 20 years, and seeing him act so sneaky and manipulative is tearing me apart. Trying to act like it doesn't bother me is really hard, it's taking a toll on me. And it doesn't stop there, it's even affecting my job now. My ex is friends with my boss, they've known each other since high school, and he's been showing up at my workplace just to visit him. It's just another sneaky way for him to stay in my life. Even my personal relationships aren't safe, I'm starting to feel so alone, like I have no one left to talk to. His behavior is pushing me away from my friends. He's making me feel angry and lonely with his false claims and mind games. He even dares to say I'm making a fuss about nothing, and that if I really loved him, I wouldn't leave him for something so minor. This really makes my blood boil. I'm left spinning, swallowed up by a storm of anger and solitude. The pain is deep, and more than anything, I'm burning with rage. His nerve is unbearable. I'm fighting this battle alone, a feeling I wouldn't want anyone else to experience. Thanks for letting me get this off my chest.
I found out that my girlfriend and her ex has 100 intimacy videos online. Please help. We've been dating for about a year now and it's great so far. The bedroom seems like something we could improve on. She was my first since I was basically a very antisocial loser for a long time. She's had intimacy with a few guys before me and she's been in long-term relationships, so she's very experienced and I've been jealous of that. I've wanted to explore intimacy a lot, but she says she's quite vanilla and only tried a lot of things because her exes wanted to try. Her ex also wanted to have a lot of firsts with her actually, so they've tried pretty much everything. We were talking the other day about her past intimate experiences. She's told me quite a lot but never everything. This time she did because I told her I wanted to have a few firsts with her as well, where it's the first for both of us or her. So she named everything she's done and says she also used to have a Pornhub channel with her ex. Her ex loved recording videos with her and uploading them, and she liked it too because she thought it looked good. I was surprised because she's never told me this before, especially since once you upload something on the internet it's there forever. I asked if she deleted the channel and she said no, it's still up. She asked her ex to delete it after they broke up and he said he doesn't know the password to that anymore so he can't delete it. I saw the channel and started to get anxiety attacks. Her face wasn't seen in any of them, but they had uploaded so many videos of themselves, like a 100, and they were quite famous and had a lot of subs. I was curious and made the mistake of going through them. I recognized a few videos that I had jerked off to years ago, and then I started to get more panicky to the point I started stress watching all the videos and just getting angry at them. It didn't help seeing another guy just getting to enjoy your girlfriend and how she was just so active with him. She was moaning loudly and he was super rough with her in some videos, leaving some marks on her body which are still there now. He was also way bigger than me, which made me insecure. She doesn't know I've gone through the videos. I'm just having anxiety and I'm also unable to get erections while having intimacy because I just keep thinking of the videos. It made me reevaluate our intimacy life. After she told me her past experiences, I know that there's literally nothing new to try with her. She's done everything and I get angry that he took all that away from me. I don't get to have any firsts with her. I don't get to be remembered if we don't work out. I went through some thinking and figured if I can't be her first, I'll at least be her last, and then she says now she knows what she likes and what she doesn't, so she's not willing to try out some stuff she did before, so her ex will still be the last she did some things with. It also made me think of the frequency of intimacy. They used to have intimacy almost every other day and the only obstacle was them meeting since they both lived with their parents. Once they started living together they started having intimacy every day and multiple times in one day. We have intimacy maybe once in 2 weeks and it feels like I'm getting a lot less even though we both have our own places now and there's no restrictions as we don't have to keep booking hotel rooms. It doesn't help when she tells about all the places she's had it with him in. Most restaurants and cafes and bars and malls in our city, they did it in the bathrooms. They've done it in their college too. She's still in college and she takes me to some events as her +1 and her ex is there too and I feel so humiliated seeing him. What should I do? My fiancé wants to become a trad wife once we get married, and now I'm tempted to call off the wedding. For some context, I am 29 and my fiancé, Kate, is 27. We have been together for 4 years now, and engaged for 1. We're due to get married this coming July. I do love Kate, and can't wait to spend the rest of my life with her, but lately she has been becoming serious about becoming a trad wife after getting married and I'm having a hard time getting on board. A bit of background of our lifestyle: we live in a major city, in a pretty high cost of living area. I earn an average salary working in accounts. She earns an okay salary as a full-time store manager for a popular clothing chain. Together, we earn enough to pay rent for a small flat, pay the bills, and have a small amount left over for some small luxuries, like takeout, going to the movies, etc. It takes forever for us to make substantial savings, most of which are going to this wedding, but we are doing okay. But that is with 2 incomes. While I do earn more than her, it's not megabucks more, and if we drop to just 1 income, presumably mine, we would just be surviving. True, her salary isn't anything glamorous, but it's enough to help pay the bills and add to the savings pot. In the area we live, it'll tough if we lose her income. Now for the issue. Shortly after the new year, Kate and I were just chilling out on the couch after a work day, when Kate brought up post-wedding life, and mentioned the idea of becoming a trad wife after marriage. I had never heard of this before, and asked her what that was. She explained that it meant traditional wife, and it was a wife that stayed home, looked after the household chores including cleaning and cooking, and more importantly looked after the husband by attending to his needs. I said that sounded like a housewife, and she said it was more than just a normal housewife, because a trad wife does everything herself to look after the home and husband without any paid work. This still sounds like a housewife to me, but whatever. I was thrown off guard by this, as Kate has never shown any desire of just staying at home before. The only time it was discussed was in relation to kids, which she said she was happy being a stay-at-home mom for when our kids were young, because on her salary we'd probably be paying more for childcare anyway. More to the point, the idea of her just staying home all day cleaning and cooking is a bit strange to me when we live in such a small place. Between the two of us we can clean the whole flat in half a day. It takes me about half an hour to vacuum and mop all floors, for example. When I self-processed that, I thought she was joking, but she was dead serious. I was then very surprised, and asked her what made her suddenly desire to just stay at home and not work. To my shock, she said TikTok of all things. Apparently there is videos and TikTokers that are these tradwives that talk about how great the lifestyle is and how happy their marriages are. These tradwives claim their husbands are always happy and home life is the best. So, Kate wants that for us too. I told her that it wouldn't make me happy. It makes no sense. We live in a small flat that requires little upkeep, we have no kids for her to stay at home with, and most importantly, we can't afford it. Again, I understand her income isn't great, but it isn't pitiful and it does help maintain our current lifestyle, which isn't that glamorous to begin with. She gave a non-committal shrug and I thought that was the end of it. Nope, she approached me again a few days later with the idea. I told her that I was against it. I tried to pry more about why she suddenly wanted to be a trad wife, but she just kept banging on about TikTok, and how she really does feel that her staying home would be the best thing for our marriage. I again reiterated the reasons why I thought it was a bad idea and do not support it. She keeps bringing it up. Now, it seems she's adamant. I can't get anything more out of her apart from the whole, TikTok says it's good for our marriage. I watched some of those TikTok videos, and I'm sorry but they come across as really creepy. There is this one blonde lady who I swear is one microchip away from going full Stepford wife. I have no problems with housewives in terms of if you live in a huge house and you really can live on one income, but that is not the case for us. More to the point, a housewife seems to be doing something outside the home, doing volunteer work, being a part of a club or society etc. to fill the time. These tradwives seem to do nothing but dress like Lucille Ball and cook bread from scratch. It's bizarre, and not something I'm looking for in a long-term partner. Kate cannot seem to let this go and she's become a bit obsessed. She's starting to learn new recipes for her new married life as a tradwife but keeps complaining that she doesn't have time to feed us both properly as a new family because of her job. I told her to do these fancy things on the weekend, but she just shot back that she should have all the time. She keeps following these TikTokers and is starting to get new clothes more fitting for a tradwife lifestyle. I don't know how much more I can tell Kate how much I am against this and it's falling on deaf ears. As a result, I am seriously reconsidering our relationship. Kate has always worked, and while I don't expect her to be a ball-busting career woman, I don't want this as an alternative. I want an equal partner and this tradwife thing doesn't seem equal. It seems creepy and finished in the 1950s for a reason. Should I call off the wedding? I am honestly at lost what to do. Kate seems committed to doing this tradwife thing and I'm just not. My best mate tells me now that I've reached the point of not wanting to get married anymore that I at least need to really sit down with Kate and tell her straight up where my head is at, but I've tried to talk to her before and she doesn't budge. Any help would be appreciated. Am I the a-hole for firing our family therapist after she asked for tips? My ex and I have a 12-year-old boy who's going through some things. We found a therapist and we've been seeing her for a couple of years. It hasn't been life-changing for me in any way. In fact, it became more of a pointless chore like making your bed or folding your underwear. I might have gotten a few things out of it but would not do it again. A few weeks ago, I had told our therapist that it's bizarre to not have to worry about money for the first time in my life. I make good money and don't have many bills. I'm saving like $1,000 a month. Last week the therapist asked me if I could start making a copayment. I don't have a copayment because my insurance covers 100% of therapy sessions. I explained that to her. She said that was true but maybe I could start paying like $20 cash because she's not making a lot with what my insurance pays her. Like a tip. I was at a loss for words. I said, and I suppose this has no relation to my telling you that I had disposable income from a few weeks ago? She said of course not. It was like she was asking for a raise lol. I said I'd think about it. I found nothing about tipping your therapist. I talked to my ex and said I was firing the therapist. She told me not to throw away 2 years of work and I said this therapist tried taking advantage of me. She offered to pay and I said I'm not stopping you but I'm not doing the sessions anymore and neither is her son. The trust I had in our therapist is forever broken. I left a voicemail and text message explaining we weren't in need of services anymore. I haven't heard back. Guess what? Our lives didn't fall apart and the therapist replied that I totally misunderstood this whole tip thing. Micromanager forced to step down. After mismanaging a new retail service. This one might be petty and definitely not as epic as some of the posts I've seen here. And I'm long-winded. Relevant background info first. Anyway, several years ago I was working at one of the big hardware stores in my area. It's a household name and has some upward mobility with decent pay for the area. I never really found a niche there after my first year and a half. I learned quickly though, so they kinda made me a Swiss Army employee. I could work hardware, plumbing, mix paint, make keys, prepare contracts for installs and knew all the features and flaws of the appliance models we sold. I was happy to do this because I was building a reputation as someone who could do everything. 2 years in, a new program was implemented that I was uniquely qualified to assist with. They created a new position for me. It was marketed as an all-in-one renovation/remodel service for interiors. I was to assist the designer with product selection, product information, contracts and local marketing for this service. Everyone involved was super excited about it. Note, I was still only making $10 an hour in 2015 for this. The problem was that because this was brand new, no one knew how it should work. The designer basically had to figure it out for herself while I tried to catch up with all of the store and product knowledge I had accumulated during my unique experience with the company. Issues with the program: it was way too expensive, product to be used had to come from one of our stores, which was limiting, and no one knew about it. It was a rocky start. Coworkers would call me over to talk to customers if they mentioned working on a big project, but that's all we had. No completed jobs to reference or anything provided by the corporate to get us running. We made our own stuff. I put together a video advertising the service and got the nod from management to use a company card to purchase a TV and media player to roll the video on repeat. We built vignettes in the store to showcase our design ability. I had been picking up a lot from the designer, so it ended up being a partnership in effect. The micromanager, enter Devin the assistant manager. He had actually been involved in the project from the beginning, and had been pretty supportive and brought good energy at first. But I think he got fed up with issues that we couldn't control, sloppy contractors refusing to fix things that they messed up, slow design process as customers worked out what they wanted and people just backing out after taking a bunch of our time when they saw the price. We were, on average, charging $3,000 more for a small bathroom remodel on labor alone. Consulting and design fees were also worked into the final cost. The product was discounted to basically being tax-free, but as I mentioned, options were limited to products the company sold. It was just too expensive to make many sales on the poorer side of town, where almost everyone knows some kind of contractor or tradesman with connections. It wasn't a good market for this program, but we did manage to start hitting, and exceeding, our numbers. Number 7 in the region for the brand new program was not bad. And just when we finally started getting some business and a rhythm around 8 months in, Devin decided that it was not working fast enough for him. Obviously the designer was to blame since he had no authority over the contractors or setting prices. She didn't know what she was doing and he was going to make some changes. He honestly didn't do much besides hover, bring bad energy and make terrible suggestions. He didn't understand the scope of what we had to do to get a customer out the door and happy. He forced us to cut corners and get the sale as quickly as possible without concern for liability, for basically destroying a room in someone's home to remake it, or what was realistic in terms of timelines. Customers felt rushed and got nervous. They backed out. We came to a standstill. We would only have 2 or 3 designs in progress at a time, but suddenly after working our asses off building the program, we had no customers for the first time in 6 months. Obviously Devin was not subjecting us to his authority hard enough. So he went harder, and fired the designer. I lost my patience. Justice, or injustice I don't know, I'm a chill dude, but I had been working my SS off for this company, making peanuts on the promise that I was working towards something. I endured working for the incompetent managers that got their positions because they started working there at 18 and made it their life. The toxic alpha male I will lead, you will follow BS was too much. So I started bullying him back, making fun of him in a teasing way where he couldn't really react without looking bad or losing control. I did that for a while and he left me alone to run the program in the interim since I was the only option. The designer and I had become friends though, so I was still mad about how it went down. I wasn't finished yet, but I didn't know what to do. Eventually they got another designer and Devin had me moved back to what I had been doing before. Passed over for several promotions that I was more than qualified for. The market had been flooded with long-time employees that were being moved around. Bad luck, but I was done with the place. One day we were sent an email link to an anonymous manager review survey. The store computers were set up with an always-on and logged-in user profile, so I wrote down the link and verified with a coworker that they weren't unique. In every department I visited that day, I wrote a review for Devin. All different ratings, some good, some bad, but I made the good ones so that they sounded bad, but as if I didn't know it was bad. I did that maybe 10 times. It wasn't character assassination or anything, just opinion-based stuff with some vague examples so no one could figure out it was me. I didn't lie either, I just said what people don't usually say out loud. He would barely look at anyone after that. A couple of weeks later he resigned his position as assistant manager and took an exterior design position at the other end of the store, as far away from the departments he had been over before. Basically the same thing as what we had done with interiors, but he was in the designer's shoes. I left a couple of months later to work tech support for DHS, but while I was still in training for that, my friends from the store told me he had gotten fired. Maybe he learned something? He should at least have learned how my designer friend felt. They were both fired at Christmas. What does your partner do that you tolerate simply out of love? His drinking. We've been together for nearly 7 years. Both of us were lifers in the food and beverage industry and specialized in bartending and have since moved on to different careers. Until a few years ago we were both drinking a lot and I had substance issues. We fought constantly and I left him last year for 8 months. During that time we both got our lives back on track. I quit drinking and taking substances and he realized that in order to win me back he'd have to do the same. So he did. Life with him is now freaking wonderful and I've never been happier before in my life. Literally, where I always had issues with severe depression, I'm now waking up with a smile on my face every day and am so happy to see him laying next to me. The only problem is that once a week he drinks and a lot of the times he goes too far. Not puking and fighting but more like we have a blast talking and laughing but then he has to have that one last shot and beer and can't remember the things we discussed or the plans we made the next day. When we are alone he suddenly wants to cuddle or do the deed for hours on end and I'm just not into that then. After he passes out, he sleeps damn near on top of me or leaves me with just enough room on the bed to lay sideways. It's just annoying but I begrudgingly put up with it because I love this man, he's my partner, he takes care of me and lets me be my weird self like no one else has before. And honestly, I feel like he deserves the chance to go out once a week, have fun, and make me uncomfortable for a few hours, seeing as how he works the equivalent of 2 full-time jobs in one of the most stressful industries in the world and then helps me out whenever I need him in my business flipping properties. Nosy parents of teenagers, what do you wish you shouldn't have seen? I'm a parent, so one weekend my wife and I are chilling out in bed watching whatever garbage on TV, when our youngest son, 11 years old, comes in and says oldest brother, 13 years old, is looking at adult videos on his tablet. So we call for oldest son, he denies and denies of course, so we tell him to bring his tablet. He hasn't learned the art of incognito browsing or clearing history completely. Going through his history, well I'll be damned, he is looking at adult videos, not just any videos though, some anime stuff, some adult raunchy stuff. But the real kicker was the Scooby-Doo adult videos. Fred effing Velma, Shaggy effing Daphne, Velma doing Daphne, etc. So mom leaves the room to let dad and his son talk about this. Starts with the usual, don't lie, you can't hide this stuff from me if I go through your browsing history, it's okay to self-pleasure, in private of course, you're growing up, yada yada yada. Finish the conversation, give him his tablet back, but as he's walking out the door, I can't but help do my best Scooby impression. But Shaggy followed by, zoinks, jinkies and row, found your adult videos. His face got so red, and I just lost it, I was in tears. Now every so often, when he starts to cop an attitude with us, I just go, zoinks to him. Kicker of it all, youngest son comes into the room with I was only joking, I didn't know he really was. What is your biggest secret desire that you are ashamed of telling anyone? I was a lifeguard for 4 years in my teens. This was a city pool. This guy, let's call him Guy, probably late 20s, dove head first into the pool. The kiddie pool, very, very shallow. I saw it, blew the whistle, and gave him a head shake. He acknowledged, rubs his chest because he scraped it on the bottom, and I thought it was over with. 5 minutes later, he dives head first into the kiddie section of the pool, 2 feet. I blow the whistle, call him over, and talk to him sternly about how I'm not reprimanding him for any other reason than that I don't want to have to backboard him for a spinal. Guy agrees, says it was stupid, apologizes and walks away. Cue mess up number 3. Guy walks away from me, over to this 6-foot water slide we have for the little kids. This is the cutest water slide, but still towers over its primary users, 2-year-olds. Along his way to the slide, Guy scoops up what I assume is his son, and puts him at the top of the slide, still standing up. This kid couldn't be more than 2 to 3 years old, had floaties on and all. Guy points at me, and over the regular pool ruckus, I hear him yell, "See that lifeguard? He told me he wants you to jump off the side of the slide." He then proceeds to point at the concrete. I see the kid's knees buckle as he goes to jump, and my heart sinks like a rock to my stomach. I immediately shoot out of my chair and yell, "Hey!" 2 things of note. 1. As a guard, you're never to stand on your tower unless you see someone in apparent danger. This is so other guards have a clear sign that something's going down, and to pay attention and get help. 2. I have a deep voice. A very deep voice. I'm quiet often, but when I get mad, I utilize it to my advantage. What one of my friends later described as the voice of God echoes put across the pool, and the entire place falls quiet. Guy immediately puts his son down on the ground and starts walking towards me. I call over my manager, explain it all, and she tells him he will be removed by the police after any other incidents. He apologizes, then goes on about his pool experience. 2 hours later, I'm in the 5-foot section, deepest aside from the 12 to 20-foot sections. Guy is walking along with friends, sees me in the chair, and goes, "Watch this." I'm still surprised he didn't say hold my beer instead. He runs and dives in really deep. Mess up number 4, reporting for duty. In front of his son, who was behind the legs of some other bro and peeks out after his dad submerges, Guy floats up to the surface of the pool face down and unresponsive. We had to evacuate the pool, stabilize and backboard him, and he is now in a wheelchair with a broken neck and a really damaged spine. What did your boss say to you during a meeting that resulted in you immediately resigning? When I was younger, I was the assistant manager of a Pizza Hut. I was moved to this particular store with the expectation that the store manager who was there had set me up to become the next store manager. When he resigned, I was passed over for a 23-year-old nobody with no experience or work ethic. He worked 25 hours a week and had me do most of his duties on top of my own. He would often show up in the middle of dinner rush with his posse, ask how things were, I would tell him it was terrible and we needed help, he'd see that we did, and say things like sounds good and walk out. Week after week people in my store were getting overworked and burned out. I constantly hounded my area manager to let me hire people, often being turned down. He would even turn down temporarily allowing neighboring stores to send their workers to my store to keep up with demand. So week after week we would have at least one person quit. Even when I was allowed to hire one person, that person would freak out on day 1 because of the workload pushed upon all of us. They would typically last 1 day, maybe a week, before quitting. One day we were told we were having a store meeting with the area manager, so I typed up my resignation letter preemptively and attended. We were told how terrible our customer service scores were, mostly hold time issues or delivery time issues because we couldn't keep enough people to staff the whole store, so delivery drivers were cutting and boxing pizzas, answering phones and taking orders, then delivering them, and how we needed to shape up. I spoke up and said we desperately needed more employees and I was waved off again. So I finished my shift that night, put my resignation letter in the fax machine with my end-of-day paperwork, locked the door, and dropped my security key and door keys in the mail slot. The next day I was inundated with phone calls from the store manager and area manager, which I ignored for a few hours. Then I picked up. The area manager begged me to come back and said he'd do anything if I came back. A raise? Sure, whatever you need. 4 more employees? No, You know you're not getting that. Hang up. I never talk to them again.
What's the best luck you have ever had in your life? My car broke down on a 2-lane highway in the middle of the Appalachians, 20 miles from the closest city and with no cell reception. The first vehicle around the bend was my grandfather, who lived 3 hours away. He had randomly decided to go on a weekend trip to the mountains. From breakdown to being picked up was less than 5 minutes. I won a PS4 from Taco Bell twice. When I turned 16 and got my driver's license, a person Mom used to visit in the nursing home gave me the almost new car that had been sitting in his garage for a year as a thank you for all the good things Mom did for him. I once had C+ going into a final, got a C- on the final, and somehow ended up with an A in the class. Didn't question anything. Looks like you rode the curve. Maybe the professor as well.
I kicked the Down syndrome kid in the face. My principal praised me for it. I knew today was going to be crap the minute I walked into school, but I didn't think it'd start literally. I was having terrible pains and gas throughout the first period. I barely made it to the bathroom before erupting. There I was, agonizing on the john at school, wishing for sweet release from the smell of my own personal hell. The stench was unbearable. I was trapped. Suddenly, the power goes out. It's pitch black and I'm still mid-dump. This was a nightmare. Frozen in fear, pants around my ankles, I gripped the toilet seat dreading what might slither out next. The pains hit again, but there was no escape now. I cowered, doing my business blind in the blackness, the smell choking me. As I'm trying to finish up, the door squeaks open. A sliver of light, then gone again. I hear laughing in the darkness, a creepy, familiar giggle that sent chills down my spine. The lights flash back on, and there's Charlie, the Down syndrome kid, crouched under the stall door with that demented grin. Hey hey hey, I screamed like a banshee and kicked him square in his face. He went flying into the stall door, clutching his nose, blood trickling out. The look of anguish and confusion on his face mirrored my own. Charlie got up and started running around the bathroom like a maniac, screaming for help. I pulled up my pants and ran out of there at warp speed. A few periods later, I get called into the principal's office. I'm sweating bullets, but, thankfully, it's for something unrelated. As Principal T and I begin to walk out, Jimmy spots me. It's him, he cries, pointing at me with a black eye the size of a grapefruit. Me and Principal Thompson go way back, and he knows when something's really freaked me out. Took one look at my face, and started howling with laughter. Were to explain how Charlie earned that shiner? I told him the whole story, starting from my stomach issues, ending with my Daniel LaRusso kick. By the end, we were both in tears. I have to discipline you, it's policy, he said, holding back laughter. Way to kick a kid while he's down. My boyfriend healed my inner child without realizing it. For context, I wasn't allowed to play outside growing up. We didn't live in a sketchy area. In fact, we live in a pretty tame and safe place. I think I wasn't allowed to play outside much due to the fact I'm a girl and my parents are immigrants from a country where people would kidnap young girls frequently. I can understand that my parents wanted to keep me safe, but it really made me feel like I missed out on a huge part of my childhood. Anyways, a week ago I bought small water guns from the dollar store to keep in my car and shoot at my unsuspecting friends if they ever came too close. Today I decided to finally use them on my boyfriend. As I waited for him to come out and walk to my car, I pulled one out and pretended to be a criminal, pointing it at him and to do exactly what I tell him to do. We both began to laugh and eventually agreed to duel it out in his backyard with some of his water guns. It was honestly a whole lot of fun. We both chased each other around his house and shoot each other from long distances. Though it was a bit unfair since he had one of those really nice water guns that you can pump in order to make it shoot farther while I still had the tiny ones. We both laughed and honestly had a great time together. I was completely soaked and so he gave me one of his shirts so I wouldn't be wet for the rest of the day. After we both surrendered our guns he gave me a huge hug and told me he loved me. It was a bit out of nowhere but it didn't matter as he kissed me and wrapped his arm around me as we went back to my car. I know it doesn't seem like a huge deal but this was the most fun I had as I never got to experience an actual water gun fight as a kid. I'm really glad my boyfriend is still childish in a way we can both goof off and have fun. Am I the jerk for refusing to go to my little sister's high school graduation? I, 24, and the oldest of 3 sisters, 23, and 17. My middle sister has extreme disabilities that required pretty much all of my parents' attention as a kid. Time, money, and any extra resources were all given to my middle sister so that she could have doctors, tutors, a special school, etc. From the age of 5 I was pretty much left to raise myself, and when my youngest sister was born, I pretty much raised her too. I struggled a lot in high school as I also have a mild version of my sister's disability, but it was ignored since hers was much more severe. My parents did not help me at all. They ignored my concerns about my grades, rejected my request for a tutor, and did not seem to care at all that I was pretty much failing. I didn't even have time to study on my own as much of my life at home revolved around taking care of my sisters. I managed to graduate and immediately took a retail job that I am still at today. My youngest sister graduates this weekend and my parents asked me to attend. The thought literally makes me want to throw up. By the time my youngest sister hit high school, my middle sister no longer lived at home, and she was on state benefits. That meant my parents suddenly had all the time and money in the world which they used to get my youngest sister in an amazing, private high school. They gave her tons of support and she is graduating with honors and has an offer to attend an Ivy League college. It may be childish, but I do not feel like it is fair at all. I don't hold a grudge against my sister, and I have sent her a graduation card, but the thought of sitting through a whole ceremony and hearing my parents talk about all of her accomplishments is too much. They are extremely upset about the fact that I said I won't go. I haven't talked to my sister yet, but I assume she will be upset as well. Am I the jerk? I have seen a lot of comments saying that choosing to not attend the graduation is some revenge plot against my parents. That is not it at all. I'm trying to protect my own feelings, as well as not ruin my sister's celebration by being negative or jealous. I am not good at hiding my feelings and I'm afraid she would be able to tell. I could care less what my parents say or think. Also, my sister and I are not very close anymore. I moved out after I turned 18 and our contact has been limited. I truly don't know how she would feel about me missing the ceremony. Regardless, I will take your suggestions about taking her out for dinner separately from my parents so we can talk.
I found messages that my boyfriend sent his ex the other night. They were so sweet they made me want to cry. My boyfriend was previously married in his 20s. He never talks about her much, just that it was something that happened in his life and he doesn't think of her much anymore. He's never said anything bad about her, but he has indicated that she had some mental health issues that lead to the decline of their marriage. All in all, I figured her loss was my gain, as my boyfriend is the sweetest, kindest partner I have ever had. Today he is at work, but told me I could go into his place to hang out before he got off. I got on his laptop to watch some Netflix, and found it open to Facebook. Yeah, he lives in the past a bit. There was a chat box open with a woman's name. It took me a minute, but I eventually recognized it was his ex-wife. My hackles were up, I'll admit. For a horrible few seconds, I thought my whole happy relationship was about to crumble. But then I read them. She messaged first. She seemed frantic, maybe in the midst of a mental health crisis. She told him she desperately wanted him back, and claimed he is the only man who ever treated her with kindness. She was practically begging. And my boyfriend responded to her that he is in a happy relationship and he will not respond to any contact like that again, and I let out a sigh of relief. But he went on to tell her that, while they will never be able to be friends, he did believe she is a good person. But her mental health issues make it impossible for her to form a stable and healthy relationship with others. He told her he hopes she can find therapy that works for her. He told her that he never wants to know her again, but he does hope that she can eventually have a stable and happy life. But that won't happen until she confronts her troubles. He ended by reiterating that he is in a relationship with someone he loves very much, and that he won't ever respond to communication from her again. But he did wish her well. He worded it a lot more eloquently than I am able to. But I was in tears at the bittersweet feeling. It reminds me of all the reasons I love him. And if I were to ever speak to his ex, I would tell her that I am truly sorry for what she has to deal with. Part of me wanted to be angry that she would send a message to my boyfriend like that, but I really only feel sympathy. I'm sorry you are hurting, and I am sorry for how it is affecting your life. I'm sorry it made you miss out on the wonderful relationship I have now.
I told my son/nephew the truth and my wife is pissed. Confusing title. Welcome to the shite show. My wife got pregnant when we started dating at 16. We decided to give the kid up for adoption once she had him. It was a tough decision, but we weren't ready to be parents at 16. My older sister had just gotten married and found out she had infertility. So, she proposed the idea of adopting our son. That way we could still be involved in his life and watch him grow up. My wife had him by C-section and my sister has raised him since. We agreed that none of us would tell him until we all agreed he was old enough to understand it. Sure, it was tough to watch him go through life knowing that's our kid until we finally had kids when we were ready. We're now 36 and he's getting ready to turn 20. I've got a great relationship with him as his uncle. He comes to me with problems he can't bring up this his parents, comes to our house regularly to spend time with our kids, and even said that he considers me his dad since his parents got divorced. We had a deal. If he found a car he wanted to restore, I would pay for anything he needed if he did the work. My dad did the same thing when I was a teenager and it was a great life lesson and I still have that car to this day. He normally just calls me by my name or a nickname made up by my wife, his mom, or the kids. Today, he came to the shop to do some work while I was out there working on something else. Then I hear, "Hey dad, my name, can you hand me a rag?" That was when I knew this kid needed to know. He's almost a grown adult, he can handle it. I told him I needed to tell him something, so we sat down at the table in there and I just flat out told him, "Wife, and I are your birth parents." He looked confused because his mom has said she gave birth to him so he would never think anything was up. He had lots of questions and I answered them as honestly as I could. He left after and asked his mom about it, who then called my wife to tell her that I told him everything. I knew I should start digging my own grave in the backyard when she put her phone down with no words and just stared at me. She was livid. I didn't ask anyone before I told him. It was selfish, but it had to be done. I couldn't hold it in anymore. My wife has suggested we open our marriage because of her obsession with Asians. My wife and I have been together for 10 years, married for 8, and we have 2 small children together. She is the love of my life, and I couldn't imagine myself with anyone else. About 3 years into our marriage, she began to express attraction to Asian characters in the shows and movies we watched together during our weekly movie nights. Initially, I dismissed it as a joke, but about a month ago, I realized she was serious when we started watching Chicago Med. She would frequently joke about wanting Dr. Choi, one of the characters, to be her doctor so that he could feel her up. I laughed along, until she insisted we stop watching when Dr. Choi entered into a relationship with another character. In retrospect, Asian men have always caught her attention throughout our relationship. Over the past few years, she's developed an obsession with popular K-pop members, joking that she'd rather be with Eric Moon or Jimin. She has even gone as far as to express disappointment about being stuck with a white man, lamenting that our babies aren't as cute. A childhood friend of mine, who happens to be Korean, frequently visits us. He and my wife have become good friends. I always thought her behavior around him was a bit odd, but I never took it personally until last night. As I was cleaning up after dinner, she put the kids to bed and asked me to sit down to discuss something important. Although hesitant, I agreed. She started the conversation by expressing that our intimate life wasn't as fulfilling as it used to be. Taken aback, I asked her what I could do to make it more satisfying. She suggested we introduce a third person into our intimate life. I immediately knew she had someone in mind. Despite her denial, after an hour of circular discussion, she revealed that she had been having intimate thoughts and urges about my childhood friend and suggested that I watch. Shocked, I told her I didn't want to discuss it anymore and chose to sleep in the living room. This morning, she took the kids to school and left to help her sister pack for a move. We haven't spoken since last night, and I'm at a loss about what to do. I'm currently sitting in my car outside my office writing this because I don't want to go home and see her. Knowing what she's been thinking about, I'm considering asking for a divorce since she's clearly not the woman I fell in love with anymore, and I suspect she's already acted on her urges with him. Is considering a divorce an overreaction to an intimate fantasy? Update. To provide a relatively quick overview, I returned home on the night of my previous post, and my wife and I were still not speaking. I waited until she was putting the kids to bed to call my friend, seeking a private conversation. I stepped outside and made the call, explaining everything to him. He expressed his sincere apologies for my situation and condemned my wife's behavior as appalling. He then confessed to me that a few years into my wife's and my marriage, she made a drunken move on him at a party hosted by mutual friends. It started as flirtation, which my friend did not reciprocate. However, she kissed him, leading him to leave the party early. When I asked him why he never mentioned this incident to me, he explained that he did not want to risk our marriage over an event that occurred while she was intoxicated. They never spoke about it afterward and continued to be normal friends. Having reflected over the past week, I realized that this party coincided with the onset of her peculiar behavior towards Asian men in media. I thanked him for confiding this to me and hung up. Immediately, I went inside to confront my wife. I expressed my utter disgust at her for not only forcing a kiss upon my friend but also for proposing that I observe her being intimate with him. I relayed my feelings and what my friend had disclosed to me. My wife confessed that she only proposed the idea of introducing him into our bedroom because she had harbored feelings for him for years and wanted to refrain from cheating on me. I clarified that she had already cheated and shattered the foundation of our relationship. Firmly, I announced our impending divorce, insisting she should not attempt to dissuade me, as I had made up my mind. For the past week, I have been staying with friends and family. Despite her incessant harassment via phone, I am proud to say that I have not indulged her. I still encounter her when I stop by the house during the day for my kids, who are too young to comprehend what's transpiring. As I mentioned in my previous post, they attend a daycare/schooling program for young children during the summer, so I typically don't spend much time at the house and usually leave while dropping them off. She refrains from discussing the matter in front of them, so it hasn't posed a problem. I have been consulting with a lawyer about divorce proceedings and searching for an apartment within my children's school district. I feel liberated, and many of you are right. Our marriage has been dead for quite a long time. I'm uncertain if I can ever perceive my friend in the same light. I plan to initiate therapy to address this, as he has been a close friend since childhood, and I would be devastated to lose him. My friends, family, and most of you on Reddit have been incredibly supportive. Thank you.
My husband thinks being a stay-at-home mom is so easy. I am writing this from the guest bedroom because my husband and I had a fight. So, the thing is, my husband is a stay-at-home dad. 3 years ago he wanted to quit his job and take care of the house and children, 6 and 2. I work a decent job and earn most of the money. My husband takes pride in being a stay-at-home dad. He always brags about how it is the easiest job in this world and women are just complaining for no reason. But the truth is I help him with the chores as much as I can. In the morning I wake up and fix the breakfast for them. My husband gets our daughter ready for school. I also do meal preps for lunch. All he has to do is assemble them and cook them. I pack my and my daughter's lunch. When I am at work, he does the cleaning and spends time with our son or does his thing. Later when I come home, I cook dinner and give my son a bath, help my daughter with her school work, or I play with them for some time until bedtime. Besides that, whenever we do laundry I fold the clothes that he washes and put them away. And during deep cleaning of our house we split the tasks 50-50. I also handle all the doctor's appointments. This system works really well, but I hate that he thinks my contribution is not enough. That he does all the chores and I don't even lift a finger. Moreover, he has a blog and TikTok where he films his days. He also makes posts about how easy it is to be a stay-at-home dad and women just complain and are full of it. It is the easiest job in this world. I am glad he likes it, but I hate that he thinks he is superior to everyone and invalidates their experience. I grew up in a house where my dad didn't even lift a finger and my mom did literally everything around the house. He was the fun dad doing bare minimum. So, I do not want that to happen to my husband. Also, it is my house too. I believe if both people do chores the stress becomes less. Also, I know many of my friends who struggle with doing chores as a stay-at-home mom. I also know women who work and still do the majority of the chores. And his comments irritate me so much. So, yesterday my friend Ashley came to visit. She is a mother of 2. Her son has ADHD and is very active. She has trouble handling her son and gets no help from her husband. Her son broke a cup in our house and Ashley was saying sorry. My husband cleaned it up and she was complaining how exhausted she was. My husband scoffed and told her, "You must be doing the parent thing wrong because I am a stay-at-home parent too, but I never had a problem. My wife barely does anything around the house and it is so easy. Maybe I should give you a lesson or two." I can see Ashley was upset. I understand why. Later that day I told him what he said to Ashley was very rude. My husband acted as if he said nothing wrong and was honest. I pointed out that he doesn't do all the chores. I help him with at least 40%. That's why he thinks it is easy. He again argued that those chores are not significant compared to what he does. I told him he is being mean to everyone. We got lucky that our kids are easy and not active. Most of the kids are hard to handle. He again scoffed and said how hard it can be. We argued about this and he told me I am being ungrateful because no man would ever sacrifice like he did. I was upset and gave him some space. Was I wrong to point it out? Edit, just want to point out, I have no issues of him being a stay-at-home dad. I just don't like his attitude towards it and the way he thinks it is the easiest job in this world, because to me and most of the people it is still a job that has no vacation days. My husband is a stay-at-home dad. 3 years ago he wanted to quit his job and take care of the house and children. I work a decent job and earn most of the money. My husband takes pride in being a stay-at-home dad. He always brags about how it is the easiest job in this world and women are just complaining. For no reason. But the truth is, I help him with the chores as much as I can. In the morning, I wake up and fix the breakfast for them while my husband gets our daughter ready for school. I also do meal preps for lunch. All he has to do is assemble them and cook them. I pack my and my daughter's lunch. When I am at work, he does the cleaning and spends time with our son or does his thing. Later when I come home, I cook dinner and give my son a bath, help my daughter with her school work, or I play with them for some time until bedtime. Besides that, whenever we do laundry I fold the clothes that he washes and put them away. And during deep cleaning of our house we split the tasks 50-50. I also handle all the doctor's appointments. This system works really well, but I hate that he thinks my contribution is not enough. That he does all the chores and I don't even lift a finger. Moreover, he has a blog and TikTok where he films his days. He also makes posts about how easy it is to be a stay-at-home dad and women just complain and are full of it. It is the easiest job in this world. I am glad he likes it, but I hate that he thinks he is superior to everyone and invalidates their experience. I grew up in a house where my dad didn't even lift a finger and my mom did literally everything around the house. He was the fun dad doing bare minimum. So, I do not want that to happen to my husband. Also, it is my house too. I believe if both people do chores the stress becomes less. Also, I know many of my friends who struggle with doing chores as a stay-at-home mom. I also know women who work and still do the majority of the chores. And his comments irritate me so much. So, yesterday my friend Ashley came to visit. She is a mother of 2. Her son has ADHD and is very active. She has trouble handling her son and gets no help from her husband. Her son broke a cup in our house and Ashley was saying sorry. My husband cleaned it up and she was complaining how exhausted she was. My husband scoffed and told her, "You must be doing the parent thing wrong because I am a stay-at-home parent too, but I never had a problem. My wife barely does anything around the house and it is so easy. Maybe I should give you a lesson or two." I could see Ashley was upset. I understood why. Later that day, I told him what he said to Ashley was very rude. My husband acted as if he said nothing wrong and was honest. I pointed out that he doesn't do all the chores. I help him with at least 40%. That's why he thinks it is easy. He again argued that those chores are not significant compared to what he does. I told him he is being mean to everyone. We got lucky that our kids are easy and not active. Most of the kids are hard to handle. He again scoffed and said how hard it can be. We argued about this and he told me I am being ungrateful because no man would ever sacrifice like he did. I was upset and gave him some space. Was I wrong to point it out? Edit, I have no issues of him being a stay-at-home dad. I just don't like his attitude towards it and the way he thinks it is the easiest job in this world, because to me and most of the people it is still a job that has no vacation days. Go to part 2. My husband thinks being a stay-at-home mom is too easy. I stopped working my part of the chores. I did tell him beforehand, since he thinks my contribution to the housework is nothing, then I will stop doing everything altogether. I told him since he thinks being a stay-at-home dad is easy, then he should have the full experience of it. My friend's husband doesn't even lift a finger around the house. So I wouldn't either. He was obviously upset. He wanted to argue that I cannot do this to him. He even tried to pull the incompetence card. I told him I am not going to do my portion of the job at home. I also gave the typical excuse, I work all day at my office so that we can survive on one income. It is selfish for him to expect me to do housework. That's what I did. I didn't do any housework. I didn't wake up in the morning to make breakfast. My husband had to do it. It wasn't hard for him, but I can see he was moody. I asked him to prepare my lunch because that is also my job. He refused at first, but then I told him he said he will do all the household chores too. That includes my lunch as well. He only packed me a peanut butter jelly sandwich. I didn't do meal prep for lunch. It was his to figure out. At night when I came home, I didn't make dinner. I asked him to do it. He was shocked but did it anyway. I didn't give my son a bath. He is fussy, which pissed my husband off. I only helped my daughter with her homework. I didn't help him with the laundry. The first few days he didn't say a word, but after a week, it was showing that he was getting exhausted. He was getting more and more angry at small stuff, and usually cleaning would cool him off. But whenever he sees a mess, he throws a tantrum. On the weekends, I went to my mother's house to relax. That weekend, we were supposed to clean our bathrooms. He did that all by himself. As the days progressed, I could see him being really angry at me. Even I admit, it has affected our intimacy a lot. At last, after 2 weeks, he yelled at me that I proved my point. Things are back to normal, but I can see he is very distant with me. Last night I asked him to talk to me. He said he knew what game I was playing, but he did not appreciate me treating him like garbage and not considering his feelings. I told him it was his words that being a stay-at-home dad is easy. I just gave him the full experience of it. He kept denying that I should have been more supportive. All these weeks he felt like nobody and so underappreciated. He felt invisible. He started to hate me for not giving a F and dumping everything on him. He is still not talking to me. We have booked a couples therapy session next week. Let's see if our relationship sustains or not. I, 26F, am an escort and I am falling in love with one of my clients, 39M, please help. I took on this client about a year ago. I was immediately struck with how handsome he was. As I got to know him, he showed himself to be a kind, sweet, charismatic, utterly brilliant person. He is always gentle. I never had to enforce any boundaries with him. Over the last year I have come to look forward to visits with him above any of my other clients. If there's a scheduling conflict, I will give him the priority. Lately I have been more intimate with him than my other clients, cuddles, kissing, hugs, and other things I don't do with my other clients. I love spending my nights with him. We have long, deep talks about everything, we have a lot of shared interests and we just get along really well. I feel very safe with him. I am falling in love with him. It's never happened to me before. I have always kept emotions separate from my work, but I can't help it with him. I will spend time with him I don't bill him for. I spend extra time with him and just love to be with him. I've been spending time with him casually, going on dates, I guess, for lack of better word, that I'm not billing for either, and the lines are starting to become very blurry. I don't know what to do. I think I want to move the relationship from professional to personal. Truth is, it's already becoming personal to me, but I can't imagine he would be okay with my work if I was his girlfriend. I am afraid of being rejected by him and ruining our work relationship. I think I would give this up to be with him, but that presents a whole new set of problems for me in finding a new career. I don't know what to do. Do I go for it? Risk rejection and ruining our professional relationship? Do I give up my career for him if he says yes? I don't think I could continue this if I was with him personally. Do I just keep silent and continue our relationship as is? Or do I drop him as a client altogether? I was never looking for a guy to save me, but I can't help what I'm feeling for him.
What made you stop and leave while doing the deed? 1. Keeping the theme of daddy. A guy once asked me who's your daddy during intimacy, and being naive, I replied with my literal dad's name. He did not finish. 2. A woman I had only just started seeing demanded I punch her in the face. Like, leave bruises type of punching. 3. I was invited to my high school crush house a couple of years after graduating. Things get hot and heavy on the couch. We move to a bedroom. Things are progressing as you'd expect, except she stops abruptly and says we need to stop. I can feel my grandma watching us. Her grandma had passed away recently. We finished the last 10 minutes of the movie we started, and I went home. 4. My drunk friend saw me go into a room with my boyfriend at a party. My boyfriend locked the door and my friend was so drunk that she thought something was happening to me. Started banging and screaming and telling everyone that I was in danger. 5. She said word for word, tell me you're going to love me for the rest of your life and stay by my side always, while moaning. I met her on Tinder that day. 6. I was having intimacy with a much younger neighbor in my apartment complex. She was really into it and yelling filthy stuff like, F my dirty hole. I'm not someone who does this, but said to her, you are a dirty little bee, aren't you? She jumps off my PP mid-thrust and yells, nobody calls me a bee, and then tells me to leave. 7. My wife farted and it tickled the hair on my balls. I couldn't help laughing. We both laughed too hard to continue. We ended up making nachos and watching South Park. 8. I felt his phone on my back. He was watching the Cowboys game. 9. I was giving my girlfriend oral, and she was tired from the gym and the motions made her go to sleep. I have been eating her out for 15 minutes and wondering why she hasn't orgasmed yet. I hear her snoring. I bursted out laughing and she woke up. 10. She grabbed my balls. Hard. That's definitely not my thing. I sort of limped away to go get my clothes on. 11. She said, F me like my daddy did. I did not proceed to F her like her daddy did. $50. Sorry dude. $55 and I'll throw in a nice sweater. Not unless that sweater is made out of $45. $100 is retail price. I'm sure you need spring break money. Take 60. $150 is retail price. Can you put someone on that knows about Xbox? I'll call a buddy of mine. He's an expert on Xbox. Great. He says the controller is $150 brand new. So I'm gonna have to stay strong at that $100. I think you waited for a moment without speaking to anyone, then messaged me back. Did I mention it's for my son? He's sick. I'd like to make him happy. Sorry to hear he's sick. And so? Tell him he won't get his controller over 40. When did you realize that one of your family members was a horrible person? When my dad told me that at 15, I'd be a drug-addicted, pregnant, high school dropout. My dad was a real piece of work. There are 5 of us kids in the family. 3 girls, 2 boys. The boys were spoiled rotten, courtesy of my dad, while the girls were treated like dirt. Like we didn't have any intelligence whatsoever, by the same person. My mom just went along with it, cause hey, he was quite a catch. Anytime my sisters or I would tell my dad something, even if it was something trivial, he wouldn't believe us, called us liars, etc. if my brothers were to tell him the same thing. He'd believe them, no hesitation. Then when we would tell him that we had already said that. Nope. We never said that. Quit lying. At 15. He told me out of the blue that I would never graduate from high school, that I would end up knocked up and addicted to drugs. At this time I was an A student, never touched drugs and was still a virgin. He said this because I had already passed the grade that he himself dropped out of high school at. And my older brother had dropped out of high school that same year. Yay, a great thing to say to your daughter. I graduated high school, the first kid to do so. Never touched drugs, the only kid that didn't start using. Waited till after high school to lose my virginity, the 4th one since my youngest brother was like 9 at the time. And do you want to know what I did? My mom ended up bribing him to go to my graduation. So I took my diploma and shoved it in his face, told him he lost, flipped him off, then walked away. He's in prison now for some stupid shit. Both my brothers are following in his footsteps. No HS education, no work experience, treats women like crap, etc. I'm doing just fine. How nice is Obama when there is no camera around? In 2008, I raised money for his first campaign, with a few of my more political friends. Nothing too big or impressive, but not bad for a very rural area. Obama stopped through our little town a couple of times that year, en route to bigger cities and events. Both times we were able to raise many thousands of dollars for the campaign. I have always been a registered, devoted and militant independent, voting for the caliber of the individual and their intellect, versus the party. Because of my job at the time, I had worked with a lot of nationally known politicians from both parties, and I had learned to equally dislike all of them for different reasons. In short, the Dems tended to be pedantic, boring, and snobbish. The Republicans were definitely more fun to hang out with, but were typically very arrogant, dim-witted, hypocritical, and full of crap. So, I didn't have any preconceptions about Obama, and my political experience had taught me to distrust all politicians, so he was already under suspicion before I met him. I was not terribly motivated by that particular election or the issues of the time, and I wasn't even positive who I would have voted for, until the day that McCain chose Sarah Palin as his running mate. And the thought of such a far-right, dim-witted, dogma-driven, nut job being just one old man's heartbeat away from the presidency was just too much risk. Anyway, I decided to help get Obama elected. On his next campaign stop in my little town, he met with me and my friends to thank us for the help and support, and each of us got to spend about 10 minutes with him. I already knew he was extremely smart from his resume and speeches I'd heard, so I had no need to test that. So, when I got my turn with him, I thought I would just test his ability to deal with unexpected adversity and his ability to make a personal connection with people who are more independent, like me, and may not be entirely tuned into all his core messages. He shook my hand, with a firm grip and big genuine smile, and we made the usual introductions and chit-chat. He then asked me what was on my mind and what issues I cared about that caused me to want to support him so generously. I told him, honestly, nothing. He looked at me a little funny, and I said, I'm a wealthy, white, straight, male with typically centrist or conservative thoughts on the economy, taxes, etc. I'm a proud firearm owner. And, I really hate all the political correctness that seems to be getting more and more ridiculous all the time. So, how is your message and your platform going to reach me? He looked pensive for a moment, and then he cracked a bit of a smile. He said, do you like to watch sports? I said, some. I draw the line at watching golf and bowling. He laughed and said, how about college football? Sure, I love it. His smile widened, and he said, then I think, perhaps, we have something we can agree to do together. What's that? I asked, curious to see where this was going. If I get elected, I promise to do everything in my power to get rid of the BCS system in college football. We both laughed and then talked for the remainder of the time about football, the silliness of the BCS system, how it would be cool for football to have December madness kind of like basketball in March. Time was up, we shook hands again, and he put his arm around my back as we walked out of the room together, like two old friends. As we were rejoining the crowd, he said, thanks for that. I think that was the most fun I've had talking about policy in the last few weeks. This stuff can get quite boring. I was struck. He was such a cool, laid-back, friendly character. Smart, well-read, worldly, maybe a technocrat, but also really cool. Ultimately, the President of the US represents all of us and our whole country to other world leaders. The strength of their character and their morals goes a long way in the negotiating power of the US. I can't say that I agreed with all of his policies, but I did vote for him. I didn't regret it for a day, and he represented our country with great effectiveness and dignity and gave the US a good reputation.
What is the most crushing thing anyone has said to you? I have ulcerative colitis. A few years ago it nearly killed me. I went from 210 pounds to 110 pounds at 6 foot tall. I had a third the red blood cells of a normal male. I was always tired, always winded, bleeding profusely from my intestines. The doctors were amazed I was still conscious, let alone walking. I had to literally run to the toilet every 15 to 20 minutes. There was no holding it, no matter how hard I tried. I couldn't live my life and go do the things I loved in fear of shitting myself. My dad constantly berated me for being lazy, for missing work, which was still a rare occurrence. Driving to work was a gamble of hoping I didn't get stuck in traffic. It happened a few times. I'd call my boss, tell him I had to go home and I'd be in a few hours late, go home and shower, wash my clothes out and get dressed and go back. One time it happened, my dad was sitting on the computer right inside the front door. He asked me why I was home and I told him. He said, "How the hell could you do something like that? That's disgusting." With a look of just pure resentment and disgust on his face.
Help, I can't resist the allure of meat, but it goes against everything I believe in. Who am I without my dietary choices? I know better than to be here, so why can't I resist? Every barbecue I've ever attended has always featured meat of some kind. Ribs, steaks, chops, every single one. From my earliest memories to this very evening, it's been the same. So why is it then, that standing before the charcoals, that I find myself gravitating towards them? My family knows my dietary choices, but even those I love very much are encouraging my participation. Of course I've said no, but even now, I can't help but marvel over the hunk of sizzling flesh that's turned my way. A single bite would change everything. A single bite, and I could be satisfied for the first time in my entire life. That juicy, tender meat, how it'd match so well with a side of. I shouldn't continue, but I have to. All I can think about is how juicy and tender that sizzling piece of seasoned flesh is, how it's beckoning me, laughing in my face as it teases me with its magnificent taste. All it would take is a single bite, and I'd abandon everything that I hold dear. I want it so badly, I can't take it anymore. With a feeling of trepidation, I carve off a small piece, which I find is quite easy given how soft the flesh is. But as I raise it towards my lips, a wild panic inhibits my movement. What am I doing? I shouldn't want this, or anything else of the sort. Despite my best attempts, the morsel of meat still finds itself in my mouth and my brain floods with the tangy aftertastes. I must have another bite, and I can only regretfully admit that I know I will once again yield. I have the power to change, but at what cost to myself? Without these dietary choices, who am I?